Chapter 56-47. Tang Xiaoyu, you're dead. Gu Feng scanned the surroundings with her sharp eyes. She couldn't find Kang Xinmu, let alone Kang Xinmu's aura. Her eyes turned cold. Although Tang Xiaoyu had used the manifestation origin stacking technique to travel, he had intentionally slowed down. Gu Feng caught his aura easily and caught up with him quickly. Tang Xiaoyu, you're courting death. Gu Feng had already set her eyes on the Supreme Ten Devil Seal. She was indirectly telling the cultivators that the Supreme Ten Devil Seal was in her possession. Everyone knew that the Wuxia Pavilion was the overlord of the Outland, so they all took a step back. Only Tang Xiaoyu kept getting involved. He was undoubtedly challenging Gu Feng's bottom line. It was also equivalent to challenging the authority of the Wuxia Pavilion. Cultivators like Tang Xiaoyu who were courting death were not rare. Hence, the crowd didn't pay much attention to Tang Xiaoyu. Instead, they set their sights on the palace that Tang Xiaoyu was heading towards. The token to find the fragment of the seven devouring demon sealing art was also pointing in that direction. In that case, the fragment of the seven devouring demon sealing art that existed in the ancient wilderness ancient city must be in that palace. The cultivators headed towards it. At that moment, Kang Xinmu and Moya had already entered the palace. The interior of the palace was no different from an ordinary palace. The interior was very compact. The switch of the secret room in the palace was also turned on the moment the two of them entered. This scene was within Kang Xinmu's expectations. Since entering the ancient wilderness ancient city, his every move had been calculated by Leng Zhanghong. Without any hesitation, he led Moya into the secret room carefully. Outside the door, there were continuous sounds of fighting. Tang Xiaoyu's speechless screams could be heard. That Tang Xiaoyu is quite loyal. Kang Xinmu stopped in his tracks and glanced in the direction of the door with a smile. Moya replied gently. Tang Xiaoyu seemed careless, but he was quite meticulous in his work. He must have long since discovered that the seven devouring devil sealing art's key token was pointing at Kang Xinmu, so he deliberately guided Kang Xinmu's position and used himself to attract the attention of all the cultivators. From this, Kang Xinmu was able to determine that Tang Xiaoyu's goal in approaching him wasn't the seven devouring devil sealing art fragment. Perhaps they had other motives, but that was a story for another time. At the very least, he was standing on her side at this moment. He was someone she could trust. There were a total of 3 palaces in this courtyard. Tang Xiaoyu didn't come to this palace for a long time because he wanted to delay the others. Kang Xinmu and Moya did not waste any time and entered the secret chamber. The entire chamber was protected by a huge array formation. Moya used a technique to reveal the formation. As far as the formation in front of him was concerned, it encompassed the entire secret chamber. Kang Xinmu, this is a derivative formation. Be careful. Moya gently reminded. Although the trapping formation couldn't affect them, the troublesome part about trapping formations was that they had no boundaries. Ordinary formations would have a fixed boundary. In layman's terms, the formations inscribed by runemasters were all enclosed. No matter what kind of formation it was, the boundaries of the formation had to be sealed before the formation could be activated successfully. Otherwise, the formation would be disturbed by external forces during the activation process and affect the formation base. Then, after the formation was activated, the formation would undergo changes due to uncertain factors. If it was light, the formation would be destroyed. If it was heavy, the caster would be affected. Regardless of the outcome, it would affect the runemaster's mind and soul. It was a fatal hidden danger for a runemaster. Of course, there were countless cultivators in the universe, and the cultivation methods were even more numerous. The boundaries of the formations passed down by runemasters were all sealed. However, there were some runemasters who broke the convention. The boundaries of the formations they inscribed would not be sealed. Instead, they would deliberately stretch out a portion of the boundaries to derive other effects when the formation was activated. This type of formation had extremely stringent requirements for the runemaster's mind and soul. When inscribing a formation, one had to pay attention to the layout of the formation base. One also had to calculate the effects of the formation base on the entire formation when the runes were activated. Most importantly, one had to pay attention to the power derived from the formation. All of these depended on the runemaster's powerful mind and soul to deduce. This type of formation was commonly known as a derivation formation. The formation in this secret room was a derivation formation. Moya made the derivation formation in the secret room appear. However, she found that the boundaries were not sealed. Instead, they extended out. Based on what he could sense so far, the range of this derivation formation covered at least this courtyard. The derivation formation didn't activate even when Kang Shinmu and Moya entered the secret room. There were many scrolls in the secret room. Some of them were cultivation methods, while most of them were methods to refine puppets. There were also some scrolls that recorded the problems encountered when refining puppets. Leng Zhanghong must have refined puppets in this secret room. On the whole, this secret room seemed to be a place for cultivators to cultivate. There was nothing special about it. If there was anything special, it would be the item placed on the table in the middle of the secret room. It was a broken black object that looked like a thunderbolt. The derivation formation under his feet was still lit. The patterns around the table were slightly different from the patterns in the other parts of the secret room. If Kang Shinmu hadn't seen the item on the table, he would have almost ignored it. When he approached the table, the connection between Kang Shinmu and the broken 7 devouring demon sealing art suddenly became very strong. In particular, the core inscription of the 7 devouring demon sealing art suddenly activated at this moment. The moment the engraving was activated, a faint halo suddenly lit up around the broken object on the table. In less than a breath's time, the broken object on the table shed its black color and revealed its original appearance. It was a jade slip that was covered in dark red patterns. The jade slip was inscribed with densely packed runes. The runes seemed to have formed a connection with the core inscription of the 7 devouring demon sealing art. One by one, they flew out of the jade slip. What was strange was that these runes seemed to be under some kind of confinement, as they surrounded the table. Kang Shinmu looked down at the array patterns around the table and guessed that this array was a confinement formation. Its purpose was to confine the power of the 7 devouring demon sealing art fragment. This was probably the reason why Kang Shinmu couldn't accurately sense the location of the 7 devouring demon sealing art fragment. He could only vaguely sense a direction. Even if there was a confinement formation around the table, the runes on the jade slip continued to fly out. This process lasted for the time it took for a joss stick to burn. During this time, the runes on the jade slip flew out continuously and gathered in this small space. Moya stood on the side and watched as the runes flew out of the jade slip and surrounded Kang Shinmu's figure. Kang Shinmu, are you okay? Moya's voice was soft and slightly worried. Chapter 56-48. Senior, I'm fine. Kang Shinmu was more concerned about Senior Moya's safety. In the end, the words were too dense and blocked Moya's view. He could not see her figure. Fortunately, there were only the two of them in the secret chamber, and there was also a derivation formation that had not been activated. Soon, the light on the jade scroll dimmed, and no more words flew out from it. Crack. A soft sound was heard, and the jade scroll on the table suddenly shattered. The shattered jade scroll fell to the ground. Kang Shinmu bent down and was about to pick up the jade scroll fragments on the ground when he realized that the jade scroll fragments disappeared the moment they touched the ground. Everything happened so quickly that Kang Shinmu could not react in time. Kang Shinmu's eyes narrowed. This jade scroll was not a fragment of the 7 devouring demon sealing art, but a medium that stored the fragment. Now that the power of the 7 devouring demon sealing art had flown out, the medium that stored the power of the 7 devouring demon sealing art had naturally lost its function. The dark red words gathered in this space were the power of the 7 devouring demon sealing art fragment. The moment the power of the 7 devouring demon sealing art fragment was released, the imprisonment formation that surrounded the table suddenly opened. Kang Shinmu could clearly feel the two forces colliding. Finally, the power of the 7 devouring demon sealing art fragment broke through the imprisonment formation and flew out of this small space. Therefore, the entire secret chamber was filled with the words on the jade scroll. The writing style of these words was the same as what Kang Shinmu had learned from the core seal of the 7 devouring demon sealing art. He could not fully understand the meaning of these words for the time being, but he had memorized all of them by relying on his outstanding memory. The words that flew out from the dark red jade scroll danced in the secret chamber. The entire secret chamber seemed to be filled with a layer of blood qi, dark red and strange. The derivation formation in the secret chamber was also covered in a layer of blood red that extended all the way to the outside as it lit up. Outside the palace. There were a total of 3 palaces in this courtyard. Kang Shinmu's palace was on the leftmost side. From the outside, there was not much difference between the 3 palaces, and there was nothing special about them. The cultivator who wanted to find the fragment of the 7 devouring demon sealing art would have to search through the 3 palaces one by one to find the correct one. The cultivators who came here were all here for the fragment of the 7 devouring demon sealing art. Naturally, each of them had their own means. Many cultivators immediately locked onto Kang Shinmu's palace. However, they were bewitched by Tang Xiaoyu and hesitated. Tang Xiaoyu, you think you can get the 7 devouring devil sealing art fragment? Every time Tang Xiaoyu used the 10,000 overlapping elements technique, Gu Feng could always find it immediately. Gu Feng's identity as a member of the Wuji Pavilion was no longer a secret. Some people were not in a hurry to enter the palace because they were waiting for Gu Feng's decision. After all, no one could say for sure what was inside the palace. Or perhaps, these 3 palaces were like the city lord's mansion just now, and were also magic tools. Just now, they were lucky enough to encounter the other side of time and space. This time, they might not be so lucky. As the saying goes, a fall into the pit, a gain in your wit. The cultivators who came here all stood aside and watched quietly. Crazy woman, is there something wrong with you? The 7 devouring demon sealing art doesn't belong to your family. Why are you always stopping me? Tang Xiaoyu was so angry that he laughed. Hand over the things you stole and the 10-directional devil extreme seal. Naturally, I won't stop you. You can go and seek death however you want. Gu Fengyu swung her hand and the bloody scar once again wrapped around Tang Xiaoyu. I didn't steal anything. I'm tired of saying this. Tang Xiaoyu broke free from the blood scar's control again. As soon as he finished speaking, he rushed toward the palace where Kang Shinmu was. Seeing this, Gu Feng did not hide her sarcasm. I told you that you can't find the fragment of the 7 devouring demon sealing art. You didn't believe me. Isn't it here? Tang Xiaoyu paused and pretended to be confused. Humph, Gu Feng sneered and glanced at the palace in the middle. This glance decided the other cultivators' choice. After weighing the pros and cons, some cultivators chose to believe Gu Feng and entered the palace in the middle. At this time, Kang Shinmu indirectly activated the derivation formation, and the palace in the middle directly exploded. In the instant that the array formation lit up, the entire palace was reduced to dust. None of the cultivators who entered were spared. This sudden change deeply told others that they had to be careful. This bunch of idiots triggered the palace's defensive formation. Gu Feng glanced at the powder on the ground in disdain and flung the blood scar again. Buzz buzz buzz. Just as Gu Feng was about to step forward, a buzzing sound suddenly sounded. Then, a jade slip appeared in front of Gu Feng. Gu Feng seemed to have received some kind of message and turned to leave. Before she left, she did not forget to leave a harsh sentence. Tang Xiaoyu, just you wait. If you had the ability, you would have caught me long ago. It's too cheap to say such harsh words. Tang Xiaoyu clicked his tongue. He stayed in place for a moment and suddenly glanced at the formation that lit up on the ground. His expression froze. Oh no. Tang Xiaoyu slapped his forehead and rushed into the palace in front of him, ignoring the cultivators who were staring at him covetously. When the remaining cultivators saw Tang Xiaoyu's action, they hesitated slightly. Seeing that the palace did not explode, they also tried to enter. In the palace's secret chamber, Kang Shinmu had already absorbed the power of the 7 devouring demon sealing art fragment. He originally thought that all the fragments of the 7 devouring demon sealing art were broken jade slips or broken scrolls. However, the fragments of the 7 devouring demon sealing art here were large paragraphs of text. After Kang Shinmu absorbed these words, he could clearly feel that the dragon bloodline had been strengthened. His calm soul and sea of consciousness were dyed with a layer of blood. The imprint left by the 7 devouring demon sealing art in his eyes was more complete. There were only fragments of the 7 devouring demon sealing art in the secret chamber. There was no rule power. The 7 devouring demon sealing art imprint without the devouring rule power only strengthened the imprint and did not increase the realm. After Kang Shinmu absorbed all the words, the secret chamber returned to normal. However, the derivation formation had already been activated. A huge energy fluctuation came from it, reminding Kang Shinmu, Emoya, and even Tang Xiaoyu who came in later that this derivation formation was not a simple trapping formation. Instead, it was a formation that would attack the cultivators who entered at any time. As for why the derivation formation did not activate as soon as the cultivators entered, only Ling Changhong would know the answer to this question. Senior Emoya, let's go. Kang Shinmu did not have time to think too much. He turned around and left with Senior Emoya. Before they could run a few steps, they were blocked by a pillar that suddenly appeared. Chapter 56-49. As more and more stone pillars appeared, the entire palace completely collapsed. The entire courtyard was filled with stone pillars that had emerged from the formation. The appearance of the stone pillars was illogical, as if they had been randomly generated. Kang Shinmu threw a punch, but it did not leave any mark on the pillar. On the other hand, he could feel the terrifying power from the stone pillar. If he was not careful, he would be forced to retreat by that power. Emoya came over and gently placed her jade-like hand on Kang Shinmu's back, dispelling the power of the stone pillar's backlash. This is the ancient martial country's battle formation. When the ancient martial country used this formation to fight against other countries, they had never lost. Emoya paused for a moment. The 10,000 Gu kingdom was the only accident, but because of this accident, the ancient martial country was destroyed. In that case, the 10,000 Gu kingdom is also quite strong, Kang Shinmu said. I guess the ancient martial country was flourishing, and the 10,000 Gu kingdom was just a country that was established not long ago, Emoya said gently. Senior, where did you learn all this? Kang Shinmu was even more impressed by Senior Emoya. There were many ancient books in the secret chamber just now. I casually flipped through them and learned about it from them. Emoya smiled gently. Kang Shinmu suddenly understood. Just now, his attention had been on the jade scroll on the table, and he indeed did not pay attention to anything else. Senior Emoya, did you find any useful cultivation techniques? Kang Shinmu thought for a moment and asked. Yes, the ancient books recorded the ancient martial arts cultivation methods of the ancient martial country, as well as the 10,000 Gu kingdom's Gu worm refining methods. Emoya smiled faintly. Seeing the very ancient dimensional bag that Emoya handed over, Kang Shinmu was a little puzzled. It's all inside, Emoya said gently. Kang Shinmu took the dimensional bag and roughly looked through it. He only felt his scalp tingle. The number of scrolls in this dimensional bag was almost comparable to the Dragon God clan's treasure trove. Senior Emoya must have brought out all the ancient books in the secret chamber, right? These are the ones I've filtered. You can choose the ones that are useful, Emoya said. Kang Shinmu felt bitter in his heart. Since Senior Emoya said that she had chosen the ancient books, then they must be useful. There was no need for her to choose them. Forget it, I'll take some time to read these books after I leave the mystic realm. Senior Emoya, if we want to leave this battle formation, do we have to destroy these stone pillars? Kang Shinmu pondered for a moment and said. Theoretically, that's the case. However, there are too many of these stone pillars. We won't be able to destroy them in a short period of time. Moya's beautiful eyes landed on the place where the stone pillars had appeared. Along with the appearance of the stone pillar, the array pattern on the ground had already disappeared. It was even more difficult to find the foundation of the formation. But I have to say, these stone pillars are very hard. Kang Shinmu threw out another punch to test the waters. As a result, his fist was shaken to the point of pain. You tried it just now. If you want to destroy it with brute force, it might be a little difficult. Moya raised her eyes and glanced at the countless stone pillars in the surroundings. Yes. Kang Shinmu felt the backlash from the stone pillars. It was indeed very strong. Aya. Suddenly, a scream was heard from the side of the stone pillar. Following that, a person appeared in front of them. His speed was too fast, so his head hit the stone pillar. It looked extremely tragic. The person was Tang Xiaoyu. No one knew what he had encountered. His fiery red hair was now covered in cobwebs, and his entire body was covered in dirt. Brother Jiang, this formation is too strange. My movement skill actually failed. Tang Xiaoyu said as he held his head that was hurting from the hit. Upon hearing that, Kang Shinmu's expression froze. When the fallen destruction was activated previously, Tang Xiaoyu had used the manifestation origin stacking technique to bring Senior Moya out from the self-formed space. The fallen destruction was an existence comparable to a heaven and earth sacred grade, but it still could not stop the manifestation origin stacking technique. What was the origin of the ancient martial country's battle formation? How could it even interfere with the manifestation origin stacking technique? The positions of these stone pillars are too random. I've been hit so many times. Tang Xiaoyu could not believe it either. Every time he appeared, there would be a stone pillar, and he would hit it coincidentally every time. Kang Shinmu listened to Tang Xiaoyu's nagging and could not help but laugh. He also secretly sighed at the power of the battle formation. Suddenly, he caught a glimpse of an obscure power swiftly attacking Tang Xiaoyu from behind. Get out of the way. Kang Shinmu grabbed Tang Xiaoyu's arm and swept him to the side. That obscure power came straight at them, striking the stone pillar beside the two of them just now. The moment the two collided, the stone pillar actually shook. Such a powerful force would definitely cause a huge commotion. However, there was only the faint sound of an aura fluctuation coming from the direction of the obscure force. There was no other movement. Brother Jiang, I'll leave first. Tang Xiaoyu glanced at the stone pillar and then at the direction of the aura. He hurriedly said and was about to leave. Where are you retreating to? Kang Shinmu was very puzzled. The battle formation here had already been activated. It was easy to enter, but it would probably be very difficult to leave. Someone wants to catch me. I have to escape first. As soon as Tang Xiaoyu finished speaking, his figure disappeared on the spot. A moment ago, he had excitedly used the manifestation origin superimposition technique. The next moment, he appeared, his entire body collided with the stone pillar behind Kang Shinmu. This collision was not light and the clang was very loud. My handsome face. Tang Xiaoyu covered his face and wailed. Kang Shinmu glanced at Tang Xiaoyu and shook his head helplessly. Even Moya could not help but cover her mouth and chuckle. Tang Xiaoyu, admit to your crimes obediently, and we'll bring you out of here. Not far away, a loud voice sounded. This voice seemed to penetrate the battle formation and the formation formed by the stone pillars to reach Tang Xiaoyu. Kang Shinmu clearly sensed that his soul consciousness and sea of consciousness were rippling. The person who spoke had a very strong soul consciousness. In the face of such a strong soul consciousness, Tang Xiaoyu appeared very calm. He only covered his ears and kept muttering, eldest senior brother is really a brainless righteous person. He kept muttering, eldest senior brother is such a brainless righteous person. I've already said that I've never been to any holy land, yet you want me to confess. What should I confess? The person who shouted outside was Tang Xiaoyu's eldest senior brother, Lian Yi. Lian Yi had only found this place after the battle formation had been activated, and Tang Xiaoyu had just entered the formation. Lian Yi used his soul consciousness to call out as he looked at the battle formation that had appeared in the courtyard. He understood Tang Xiaoyu's strength. Tang Xiaoyu might have the ability to enter, but he might not have the ability to come out. Tang Xiaoyu was very smart, and he would not seek death. Correspondingly, Tang Xiaoyu also understood Lian Yi's character. If he did not respond, Lian Yi would not continue to stay. Tang Xiaoyu also heaved a sigh of relief when Lian Yi left. Chapter 5650. Tang Xiaoyu took a deep breath, stood up and stretched his body. For a split second, Kang Xinmu felt a strange, yet strong power from Tang Xiaoyu. Even though Tang Xiaoyu's face was still swollen and bruised, his entire temperament had changed. He was like a completely different person from his sickly appearance just now. Brother Jiang, I don't care about that stuff. To be honest, I came to the hidden territory for something else. Tang Xiaoyu's words were not false. The art of 7 devouring demons sealing sounded powerful, but there were many negative rumors about it. Tang Xiaoyu was a person who loved to die, but was afraid of death. Anything related to darkness, he would not touch it if he could. I know many of you came here for the fragment of the art of 7 devouring demon sealing. From my point of view, General Lang Changhong's method is a bit extreme, but perhaps there is a reason behind it. Some things, you have to act within your means. Tang Xiaoyu was giving Kang Xinmu a piece of advice. Yes. Kang Xinmu did not deny Tang Xiaoyu's statement, nor did he agree to anything. It was a very pertinent response. Mo Ya heard everything Tang Xiaoyu said, and also saw all of Tang Xiaoyu's actions. This person, Tang Xiaoyu, was perhaps a person that Jiang Shenwu would find hard to come by on his path of cultivation in the future. Tang Xiaoyu looked around at the stone pillars. He was also melancholy. Brother Jiang, I did not think there would be a battle formation here. The information I sent was wrong, please forgive me. These stone pillars did not seem to be easy to deal with. It's not your fault. Kang Xinmu was also thinking about the same thing. What kind of existence was the art of 7 devouring demon sealing, that General Lang Changhong would go to such lengths to destroy it? First, it was the destruction of a saint rank item, and now it was a battle formation. This was a battle formation that Kang Xinmu had never seen before. He could not find a pattern or a way to break through it. As Kang Xinmu was thinking, the art of 7 devouring demon sealing quietly activated in his eyes. Kang Xinmu's heart skipped a beat. He suddenly understood General Lang Changhong's concerns. The 7 devouring devil sealing art could control a person's mind. This was only a part of the 7 devouring devil sealing art, but it could actually control its own power. If he obtained the complete 7 devouring demon sealing art, it was highly likely that he would walk the same path as General Lang Changhong. Kang Xinmu suddenly wasn't sure if his method of searching for the fragment of the 7 devouring devil sealing art was the right choice. Kang Xinmu was deep in thought when he glanced over and saw Tang Xiaoyu start tossing and turning again. Tang Xiaoyu focused his mind and devoted himself to using the manifestation origin stacking technique. After running into a wall 3 times in a row, Tang Xiaoyu seemed to have found the trick. The next time he landed, he would cleverly avoid the stone pillars. After many attempts, he was able to skillfully avoid the stone pillars and move freely in the forest of stone pillars. I'm still as quick-witted as ever. Accompanied by Tang Xiaoyu's laughter, the forest of stone pillars began to change. The stone pillar forest was a method of the battle formation, but no one expected that the stone pillar forest would transform. Moreover, there was no pattern to the transformation. Even so, Tang Xiaoyu was still able to dodge freely in the forest of stone pillars that was changing. Looking at his posture, he had already mastered the movement technique of the manifestation origin stacking technique. At the very least, he had made some adaptations to the battle formation. Yes, adaptations. Kang Xinmu had an epiphany. The 7 devouring demon sealing art was a technique that leaned towards darkness, but the advancement of the technique was ultimately complementary to the heart of the cultivator. If the heart was towards light, it would not be tainted by darkness. Knowing how to adapt at any moment, even if it was darkness, it would also flow towards light. Moreover, in the boundless universe, there were countless cultivators. Wherever there were cultivators, there would be corresponding cultivation techniques. With such a large number of cultivation techniques, how could one differentiate between darkness and light? The definition of a cultivation technique was ultimately based on the heart of the cultivator. The so-called righteousness and evil were just the cultivator's own standpoint. Just like the relationship between Kang Shinmu and the demon god race. To Kang Shinmu, the demon god race was against him, so he defined the demon god race as the evil side. However, to the demon god race, Kang Shinmu had killed Ao Tong and Ao Feng, so they defined Kang Shinmu as the enemy. Both sides had different standpoints, so there was a fundamental difference in the definition of righteousness and evil. Even though there were many hidden dangers in cultivating the 7 devouring demon sealing art, as long as one followed one's heart, the 7 devouring demon sealing art would definitely be an excellent cultivation technique. At least for the current Kang Shinmu, he needed the power of the 7 devouring demon sealing art. After the 7 devouring demon sealing art's insignia merged with Kang Shinmu's eyes changed, and he could see the essence of the technique. Even his devouring power was strengthened, and he could easily devour domain power. The only thing that was lacking was that Kang Shinmu could not use his own will to activate the insignia of the 7 devouring demon sealing art. Besides the fact that the 7 devouring demon sealing art was too powerful, Kang Shinmu's current strength was limited. He needed to strengthen his understanding of the power of the soul. Looks like you've already made your choice. Moya stood quietly at the side, her beautiful eyes filled with Kang Shinmu's thoughts. Just now, she saw a faint layer of red aura flowing around Kang Shinmu's body. When Kang Shinmu opened his eyes, that red aura also concealed itself on his body. That red aura was the aura of the 7 devouring demon sealing art. Senior Moya, I want to give it a try. Kang Shinmu said in a low voice. Junior believes that the nature of the 7 devouring demon sealing art depends entirely on the will of the cultivator. The 7 devouring demon sealing art was only a cultivation technique. How could its essence be so easily defined just because of the power it displayed? Yes, but you have to do what you can, Moya said gently. Moya's gentle voice made Kang Shinmu's wavering heart completely firm. In the battle formation, the transformation of the stone pillars gradually slowed down. However, it still maintained a speed that was neither fast nor slow, and maintained the transformation of the stone pillars. These stone pillars all looked the same. Just by looking at them with the naked eye, it was impossible to see any difference. Not to mention using the characteristics of the stone pillars to determine the next position. Kang Shinmu, pay attention to your surroundings. Moya said gently. Her slender jade-like hands gently formed a seal. Not long after, the surroundings were shrouded by a faint white holy light. Under the envelopment of Moya's white holy light, some words actually appeared on the stone pillars. Each stone pillar had a certain amount of words on it. The words were written in the common language of the ancient martial country. Kang Shinmu could only see the words, but he was unable to understand what they meant. After a quarter of an hour, the white holy light gradually dimmed. Chapter 56-51. Got it. Kang Shinmu nodded. Did you discover anything? Moya's tone was gentle, and her face was pale. I discovered that there are words on every stone pillar, and they are of different lengths. As Kang Shinmu spoke, he realized that Moya was looking at him strangely. Seeing that Moya's lily-white hands were forming seals again, Kang Shinmu hurriedly stopped her. Senior, please wait a moment. Moya was helpless. She did not know what Kang Shinmu was going to do. Kang Shinmu would not let Moya waste her energy, especially when they were trapped in the battle formation. No one could guess what would happen next, so he had to conserve his energy. Moya had given him many ancient books of the ancient martial kingdom, and Kang Shinmu felt that he would definitely be able to find a translation for them. After searching for a while, he found 2 scrolls. One of the older scrolls had words that were exactly the same as the words he had seen on the stone pillars. Although he did not know the language of the ancient martial kingdom, Kang Shinmu had a good memory. He could roughly remember it after reading it once. The other scroll had words written in the current era. Kang Shinmu made a rough comparison and roughly understood the situation of this battle formation. Moya felt a little helpless when she saw Kang Shinmu's actions. Leng Zhonghong was not a fool. Why would he translate the battle formation using the current era's language? Senior Moya, I know the breakthrough point of the battle formation. After comparing the 2 scrolls, Kang Shinmu passed the 2 scrolls to Moya. Look here and here. Moya looked at where Kang Shinmu was gesturing and indeed found the difference between the 2 scrolls. Moya knew a little about the language of the ancient martial kingdom. She took the 2 scrolls. The older scroll recorded the battle formation, including the strong country teams that had been defeated in the battle formation, and some extremely strong cultivators. The other scroll also recorded the battle formation. It could be considered a supplement to the battle formation. From the ancient martial kingdom until now, he had lived alone for thousands of years. Apart from searching for a way to destroy the 7 devouring demons' sealing art, he had also devoted himself to researching battle formations. The contents of the 2 scrolls were naturally different. What surprised Moya was that the place that Kang Shinmu had discovered was the location of the battle formation's base. This might be the breakthrough point to break the battle formation. While Moya was reading the scroll, Kang Shinmu was already observing the surrounding stone pillars. Without Senior Moya's holy light, the words on the stone pillar couldn't appear. Kang Shinmu gathered his soul consciousness and attempted to activate the 7 devouring devil sealing art. After a few tries, the 7 devouring devil sealing art was activated. Kang Shinmu was very clear that the 7 devouring devil sealing art had not been activated because of his command, but because of some kind of call. No one can leave this place. An aged voice echoed in the space. Like a clap of thunder, it reverberated incessantly, one after another. Every time it was repeated, the stone pillar would tremble violently. The trembling stone pillar seemed to have received some kind of command and suddenly turned into several spears, rushing towards Kang Shinmu. Kang Shinmu used the Supreme Dragon martial technique that he had previously comprehended to repel the incoming spears. The spears were repelled and once again turned into stone pillars. However, very quickly, other stone pillars turned into spears and attacked, their numbers increasing. Not only that, the spears that were repelled, after turning back into stone pillars, quickly turned back into spears and attacked again. Even though Kang Shinmu had comprehended the Supreme Dragon martial technique, he couldn't withstand this kind of bombardment. Especially when these stone pillars turned into spears, their numbers would only increase as time passed. Currently, the conditions for the stone pillars to turn into spears were unknown. Kang Shinmu, pay attention to the stone pillars' attack trajectories. Moya's beautiful eyes focused as she said. Yes, Senior. Kang Shinmu answered straightforwardly. However, if he really had to observe the stone pillars' attack trajectories during the battle, it would be difficult for him to do so. Stop your futile struggle, none of you can escape. The aged voice resounded again. As if it was some kind of command, the stone pillars suddenly changed their positions. The ground immediately collapsed inch by inch and the entire forest of stone pillars in the battle formation was suddenly suspended in the air. The stone pillars didn't fall and correspondingly, Kang Shinmu didn't feel like he was falling either. However, he clearly saw that his feet were suspended in the air. Moya's feet were suspended in the air as well and her figure was still standing in the air. According to the records on the scroll, the 2 of us should be at the base of the battle formation. Moya's beautiful eyes swept across the surroundings of the stone pillars and said gently. Hearing Moya's words, Kang Shinmu understood. He suddenly turned around and took 4 steps forward, just in time to reach a stone pillar. This stone pillar also coincidentally turned into a spear and stabbed towards Kang Shinmu. Kang Shinmu conveniently grabbed this spear and used the Supreme Dragon martial skill to brutally destroy this spear. After the spear was destroyed, it no longer turned into a stone pillar and there was now an empty spot. At the original position of the stone pillar, runes gradually appeared from the air. From the looks of it, it should be the base of the battle formation. Senior Moya, please wait a moment. Kang Shinmu relied on his own strength to find 4 stone pillars. The 4 seemingly simple stone pillars actually consumed a lot of Kang Shinmu's strength. Kang Shinmu, stop for a moment. Moya didn't deny that Kang Shinmu's method was not bad and he indeed found the 4 important points of the battle formation. However, the battle formation was very big and Kang Shinmu wanted to accurately find the battle formation's base. He would most likely use up all his strength. At that time, if General Leng Changhong appeared, he would be in danger. Senior, please be careful. Moya only cared about looking at Kang Shinmu and completely did not notice behind her. Kang Shinmu didn't have time to say anything and shot to Moya's side and brought her to the side. He saw hundreds of sharp arrows that were only an inch long pierce through the air and fixed on the stone pillar at the side. It was unknown what these hundreds of sharp arrows were, but they actually managed to destroy the stone pillar. The stone pillar didn't even last for a few breaths before it shattered. Taking advantage of the collapse of the stone pillar, Kang Shinmu inexplicably pulled out a sharp arrow. An icy cold feeling suddenly emerged from the sharp arrow and drilled into Kang Shinmu's meridians, heading straight for Kang Shinmu's soul consciousness. Kang Shinmu knew that his soul consciousness was very strong and he didn't dare to let this strange power barge in so recklessly. In the end, his soul consciousness couldn't stop this power and was directly swallowed by the devouring power. After the devouring power swallowed this power, Kang Shinmu clearly felt that the mark of the 7 devouring demon sealing art became more stable. Originally, he had just barely stepped into the first level, but after swallowing this power, he stabilized the first level. Chapter 56-52. Kang Shinmu looked at the remaining arrows. Unfortunately, Kang Shinmu only had time to grab 4 arrows. The remaining 4 arrows did not have the same power as before. It seemed that not every arrow had that kind of power. The 7 devouring demon sealing art should not exist. That weathered voice resounded again. These words also proved his identity in a disguised way. He was the city lord of the ancient desolate city, General Leng Changhong. Leng Changhongwu's words caused the other cultivators in the battle formation to be on their guard. The 7 devouring demon sealing art had appeared. All the cultivators used their own techniques to search for the 7 devouring demon sealing art. There was a strange person among these cultivators. His brown curly hair was messy as if he hadn't combed it for a long time. He wore a linen robe and held an 8 trigrams compass in his hand. He was mumbling something. No one knew what secret technique he used to summon the key token of the 7 devouring demon sealing art into the battle formation. The key token floated above the battle formation like a star, pointing out a direction for the cultivators. The guiding energy on the key token gathered on Kang Shinmu's side. Kang Shinmu's face darkened. However, Kang Shinmu felt that being pointed out by the key token was not a big deal. The real problem was that when the key token's guiding energy gathered on his body, the original blood red color gradually darkened and turned dark red. There were 2 eye-catching marks on his body. Since it was the key token of the 7 devouring demon sealing art, then all the signs on the key token were related to the 7 devouring demon sealing art. At this time, the key token's guiding energy turned dark red, and there were 2 marks on it. This meant that there were 2 7 devouring demon sealing art fragments in the world. For a moment, all the cultivators were excited. They headed straight for the direction the key token was pointing at. Kang Shinmu, let's get out of here first. Moya glanced at the surroundings with her beautiful eyes. For the time being, there was no sign of a cultivator. The battle formation had been fully activated and the battlefield was huge. Those cultivators wouldn't be able to find them in a short time. There was also the possibility that some cultivators had used special methods to get here. As soon as Moya finished speaking, the space in front of her suddenly distorted, and then a hand reached out from it. She couldn't care less about her usual image anymore. Her jade-like hand grabbed the hand in the air and flung it forcefully. A blood-curdling scream rang out as the man's body slammed into a stone pillar. "It's me, Tang Xiaoyu." Seeing that he was about to fall, Tang Xiaoyu hurriedly hugged the stone pillar. Moya relaxed when she saw that it was Tang Xiaoyu. "Tang Xiaoyu, didn't you go out? Why are you back?" Kang Shinmu was puzzled. Just now, Tang Xiaoyu had been continuously using the manifestation origin stacking technique. Calculating the time, even if he hadn't left the battle formation yet, he would be out soon. "I've found a way out. I've come back to take you out." As Tang Xiaoyu spoke, he realized that the stone pillar he was hugging was shaking violently. "Let go, quickly," Kang Shinmu hurriedly reminded him. Before Tang Xiaoyu could let go, he saw the stone pillar turn into a sharp spear. He hurriedly used the manifestation origin stacking technique to avoid the attack of the spear. Kang Shinmu was already very familiar with dealing with the spear transformed from the stone pillars. He directly used the Supreme Dragon Martial technique to destroy everything. "This is the breakthrough point of the battle formation that I found. Take a look." Tang Xiaoyu threw a jade slip to Kang Shinmu. "Aya, who sneaked up on me?" In the next moment, a sharp voice was heard. Immediately, a young man in a linen robe with curly hair appeared out of thin air. The jade slip that Tang Xiaoyu threw to Kang Shinmu was snatched away just like that. "Hai Fan, look, Gu Feng." Tang Xiaoyu suddenly pointed behind the young man and exclaimed. However, the young man who was called Hai Fan was indifferent. Instead, he calmly accepted the jade slip. "Tang Xiaoyu, this thing is mine now that it's in my hands. Don't play tricks on me." Hai Fan glanced at Tang Xiaoyu mockingly. "However, your IQ is so low. Can the map you made be used?" Hai Fan casually glanced at the jade slip and could not help but frown. Indeed, the brains of people who like crazy women are so disgusting. Tang Xiaoyu casually threw a large pile of jade slips to Hai Fan. "Since you like taking other people's jade slips so much, these are all for you." After Tang Xiaoyu threw the jade slips, he turned around and flashed to the side. Before leaving, he even gave Kang Shinmu and Moya a look. Kang Shinmu and Moya understood what he meant. Hai Fan subconsciously caught the jade slips that Tang Xiaoyu threw over. Boom! In the next moment, all the jade slips exploded. The yellow smoke produced by the explosion quickly engulfed Hai Fan's figure. The pungent smell that emanated from it almost made Hai Fan die on the spot. "Tang Xiaoyu, you're dead." As Hai Fan spoke, he threw a compass at Tang Xiaoyu. Tang Xiaoyu was already prepared to destroy it. "Wait a moment." However, Kang Shinmu was one step ahead and caught the compass that Hai Fan threw over. He easily dissolved the spell that was about to explode on the compass. This is just an ordinary Dharma artifact. The really useful Dharma artifact is the compass that he is holding right now. It's called Devouring Star, and it seems to be able to summon something special. Tang Xiaoyu saw that Kang Shinmu was interested in Hai Fan's compass, so he explained. Kang Shinmu nodded and rushed over to Tang Xiaoyu's position with Moya. The three of them avoided the attacks of the stone pillars while looking for the array foundation, gradually distancing themselves from Hai Fan. That Hai Fan is also a disciple of the Everlasting Pavilion, the disciple of the Great Elder. Logically speaking, he should be chasing after the crazy woman. "I don't know what's wrong with his brain, but he actually came here," Tang Xiaoyu muttered. "And that guy's brain is clearly full of Devouring Star and the crazy woman, but he didn't fall for it. That's really strange." Thinking about it carefully, this was the first time that Tang Xiaoyu failed to deceive Hai Fan. It would have been better if Tang Xiaoyu had not said this, but once he said it, even Kang Shinmu could not help but despise him. He was clearly the one who kept saying, "crazy woman," but just now he said, "Gu Feng." As long as there was a normal person, they should not fall for it. Tang Xiaoyu's IQ was indeed lacking, but he was still very reliable. He found another complete array foundation for the battle array. Moreover, what surprised Kang Xinmu was that his ability to comprehend the 10,000 elephants origin superposition technique was extremely terrifying. In just half an hour, Tang Xiaoyu could use the 10,000 elephants origin superposition technique to leave the battle array. Looking at Tang Xiaoyu's hand gesture, it should be 8 layers. What Jiang Shenwu understood was to fold the space 8 times, and then open up the connection between the battle formation and the outside space, thus escaping. The truth was similar to Kang Xinmu's speculation. Tang Xiaoyu was 8 layers. Chapter 56-53. There was a fundamental difference between the 8 layers of time and the 8 layers of space. The 8 layers of time referred to the fact that when the spell was activated, 8 layers of space would be opened, which meant 8 coexisting passageways. Correspondingly, there would be 8 different exits. Of course, one could also set the 8 exits at the same location through the control of one's mind and consciousness. The so-called 8 layers of time referred to the fact that Tang Xiaoyu could enter and exit these 8 exits at will within a short period of time. The short period of time here depended on the cultivator's mastery of the manifestation essence superposition technique. The 8 layers of space referred to the fact that when the spell was activated, only one layer of space would be opened, which meant that there would only be one exit. In this passageway that appeared, the space would be stacked 8 times, which would shorten the distance between the starting point and the destination. In comparison, the manifestation essence superposition technique was more suitable for short-range use. On the other hand, the manifestation essence superposition technique was more suitable for long-range use. The distance here could be thousands of miles, tens of thousands of miles, or it could be between continents, or even between different spaces. Tang Xiaoyu's current understanding of the manifestation essence superposition technique was 12 yuan. However, he could only skillfully use the manifestation essence superposition technique. As for the manifestation essence superposition technique, Tang Xiaoyu could only stack it 7 times, and he could not guarantee an exact landing spot. "I'll take you to the array foundation that I found now." Tang Xiaoyu was very confident in his manifestation essence superposition technique, and he did indeed bring Kang Xinmu and Emoya to their destination. Kang Xinmu roughly glanced at the array foundation and deduced the remaining lines of the array foundation that he had just found. Emoya could not help but admire Kang Xinmu. Kang Xinmu, a person who did not understand the language of the ancient martial country, had actually combined 2 scrolls and found a way to crack the battle formation. She did not know whether to say that he was extremely talented in divination or that he was just lucky. In order to break out of this battle formation, it was useless to just crack the array foundation, one had to destroy all the soldiers in the formation. This was the final method that Kang Xinmu had found to crack the formation. He could still understand the other things, but it was very difficult to understand all the soldiers mentioned here. As far as the eye could see, there were only stone pillars and sharp arrows that appeared from time to time in the entire battle formation. Other than that, there were only the cultivators who had been drawn into it. As for the soldiers, they did not seem to exist. Kang Xinmu quietly released the supreme power of the soul to check the surrounding situation. Emoya's beautiful eyes narrowed slightly as she sensed the changes in her surroundings. Tang Xiaoyu focused his mind and was still fiddling with the manifestation origin stacking technique. Actually, before he found the array foundation, Tang Xiaoyu had used the manifestation origin superposition technique to leave the battle array. But at that time, he was so excited that he returned and never went out again. Tang Xiaoyu was currently trying to restore his previous state. The 3 of them sensed a large group of cultivators approaching. Surprisingly, the surrounding space was still very quiet, and there was no movement of any aura. "Kang Xinmu, you guys be careful." Emoya's slightly narrowed beautiful eyes suddenly opened. Her holy light sensed that there were no less than dozens of abnormally obscure auras around them, and they were rapidly approaching them. However, the strange thing was that she could only sense these auras with the holy light, but could not see them. The obscure aura detected by the holy light had already surrounded them. However, they were only surrounded by the stone pillars and the fog that lingered around them. Senior, I know what those soldiers are referring to. Kang Shinmu withdrew the soul consciousness that he had released. What is it? Tang Xiaoyu cast a puzzled look at him when he heard this. Among the three of them, he was the one who understood battle arrays the best. In order to try out the manifestation origin stacking technique, he had almost run through the entire battle array. Apart from the cultivators who had barged into it, he had not seen any other existences. Do you remember the patrolling troops we saw when we first entered the ancient desolate city? Kang Shinmu said in a low voice. When he said this, Moya and Tang Xiaoyu suddenly understood. Although those patrolling troops were also puppets, their hearts were alive. Brother Jiang, that's not right. Those troops became sacrifices to activate the annihilation. Didn't they disappear with the annihilation? Tang Xiaoyu was puzzled. In the blink of an eye, he seemed to have thought of something, and his pupils shrank. Are they still alive? Tang Xiaoyu found this unbelievable. Kang Shinmu nodded. The hearts of those troops were alive. Although they had become sacrifices for the annihilation, as long as their hearts still existed, they could be resurrected. This was a technique of Leng Zhanghong's battle array. As if to prove their guess, several figures holding sharp arrows suddenly rushed over from the side. Kang Shinmu and Tang Xiaoyu cooperated and repelled the figures that were rushing over. They were the patrolling troops of the ancient desolate city. After they were knocked down by Kang Shinmu and Tang Xiaoyu, they fell into the void below. Not long after, they reappeared. Brother Jiang, do we need to destroy their hearts before we can break through the array? Tang Xiaoyu's speed was very fast, and he caught another soldier. In the time it took for him to speak, he had already dug out the soldier's heart. Kang Shinmu had also thought of this question. However, he had a feeling that things were not so simple. If destroying the hearts could get rid of all the soldiers here, then these soldiers would have already been sacrificed. No matter how strong their hearts were, they would have been destroyed by the power of the annihilation void storm and Ao Feng's self-destruction. However, this was not the case. These soldiers appeared again. Their hearts were still beating. During this time, Tang Xiaoyu destroyed one heart and sealed another at the same time. However, not long after, these two soldiers still stood up, and they could still take the initiative to attack others. This proved that destroying the soldiers' hearts was useless. Do we have to go and defeat that city lord? Tang Xiaoyu grinned. We don't even know where he is, how are we going to defeat him? While he was muttering, Tang Xiaoyu's hands did not slow down. However, the difficulty of dealing with the soldiers in the array exceeded Tang Xiaoyu's expectations, and for a while, they fell into a bitter battle. Kang Shinmu had been observing these soldiers. When they attacked, their hearts beat at the same rhythm. When they left the battlefield, the rhythm of their heartbeats would change, maintaining a rhythm that was neither fast nor slow. Just like the soldiers' heartbeats, the soldiers' attacks were also the same, but there was a difference in strength. Suddenly, Kang Shinmu discovered something strange. The soldiers who were attacking Tang Xiaoyu were beating at the same rhythm, and the soldiers who were attacking from behind were also beating at the same rhythm. The soldiers who were rushing over were mainly focused on Moya. Kang Shinmu leaped over, and in a few moves, he knocked down a few soldiers who wanted to get close to Moya. It didn't take long for even more soldiers to gather over. These soldiers' heartbeats were beating at the same rhythm. Until now, the soldiers who were attacking them were divided into 3 groups, and they should belong to 3 different troops. Chapter 56-54. Kang Shinmu could see the hearts of these soldiers. The hearts of the 3 teams surrounding them were all the same. It was obvious that the core that controlled them had yet to appear. Thus, it would be useless no matter how many soldiers they destroyed. To completely destroy these soldiers, they had to destroy them from the root, which was to find the core that controlled them. Senior, Brother Jiang, wait a moment. I'll see if I can send you out. No one knew what Tang Xiaoyu did, but a gray cover suddenly appeared around him, enveloping his entire body. At the same time, several air currents swept past his body from time to time. As the air currents flowed, the space around him distorted from time to time. The moment the space was opened, Kang Xinmu understood that this was the manifestation origin superposition technique. According to Senior Emoya, the manifestation origin superposition technique was a very unique spatial movement technique. Moreover, it was the only spatial movement technique. Logically speaking, using the manifestation origin superposition technique could completely understand the battle formation. But when it came to Tang Xiaoyu, it did not seem to be of much use. Kang Xinmu did not have much hope regarding this. He observed the attacking soldiers while paying attention to the situation around Emoya. 2 hours passed. Tang Xiaoyu's manifestation origin superposition technique did not seem to have made a substantial breakthrough. The only contribution he made was probably sending a portion of the soldiers into the space opened by the manifestation origin superposition technique. After being sent in, those soldiers never came back. Tang Xiaoyu, where did you send them? Kang Xinmu felt that this was an opportunity to destroy the soldiers in the battle formation. They're still in the battle formation. As the caster, Tang Xiaoyu knew very well the exits of the manifestation origin superposition technique that he had just used. Without exception, all of them were in the battle formation. Since all the exits were in the battle formation, the soldiers that had been sent away were still in the battle formation. It was obviously not very realistic to use this to destroy the soldiers in the battle formation. Wait. Soon, Tang Xiaoyu's expression froze. There's an exit outside. Kang Xinmu's expression froze as he waited for Tang Xiaoyu to continue. However, the next moment, Kang Xinmu's entire body froze. Where is Senior? Senior Moya had disappeared. Tang Xiaoyu scratched his head awkwardly. He had tried to superimpose many times and finally managed to open up an exit to the outside world. He had not expected to send Emoya out. Brother Jiang, this combat space is too strange. I can't control it well. Tang Xiaoyu could see that Emoya was very important to Kang Xinmu. If anything happened to Emoya, he would be finished. His wish to meet his idol was even slimmer. Are you sure the exit is outside? Kang Xinmu asked in a deep voice. He sensed the space where Emoya had been. However, just as Tang Xiaoyu had said, this battle space was very strange, and he couldn't sense Emoya's exact location. Instead, he saw a black lightning-like light suddenly attacking from this direction. Out of the way. Kang Xinmu hastily shouted. Tang Xiaoyu did not dare to delay and hurriedly moved away. Some of the black lightning bolts hit the gray shield around Tang Xiaoyu. The shield only twisted a little and easily dissolved the black lightning bolts. Kang Xinmu sighed inwardly. As expected of someone from Heavenly Yuan Palace, he actually had many extraordinary secret treasures. Brother Jiang, I'm sure the exit is outside the battle formation. However, I can't open that passage now. Tang Xiaoyu's words were true. Affected by the battle formation, his manifestation origin superimposition technique was not as useful. If it was senior brother Lien Yi, he would definitely be able to enter and exit the battle formation at will. Kang Xinmu naturally believed Tang Xiaoyu's words. He was only worried that Emoya would be in danger alone outside the battle formation. Myriad Bone Bell? At this moment, the ancient voice suddenly rang out. This time, the voice came from beside Tang Xiaoyu. Tang Xiaoyu was so frightened that he quivered and almost fell into the void that appeared in the battle formation. What myriad bone bell? I don't know. Tang Xiaoyu glanced at the figure that suddenly appeared and moved to the side of Kang Xinmu. The person who spoke was dressed in black armor, and his entire body emitted a sharp aura. No matter where he stood, he couldn't conceal the murderous aura around him. He had the bearing of a general who had fought on countless battlefields. Without a doubt, this person was General Leng Changhong of the ancient martial country, who was also the current city lord of the desolate ancient city. Seeing Leng Changhong appear here, Kang Xinmu secretly heaved a sigh of relief. He was in the battle formation, so he would not hurt Moya. Are you his descendant? Leng Changhong, who appeared, did not pay attention to the surprised Tang Xiaoyu and asked. This voice carried a considerable amount of inner force, causing the surrounding stone pillars to shake violently. The foundation of the battle formation under Tang Xiaoyu's feet also shook. I don't know what you're talking about. Tang Xiaoyu grinned and hurriedly performed the manifestation origin superimposition technique. Just like that, his figure disappeared on the spot. Only Kang Xinmu was left. When Leng Changhong's gaze met Kang Xinmu's, his face was terrifyingly gloomy. You deserve to die. This simple sentence was like the judgment of the Grim Reaper. Kang Xinmu suddenly felt a huge wave of pressure suddenly attack. Fortunately, Kang Xinmu's soul consciousness was strong enough, and with the protection of the soul force, he forcefully withstood the pressure of Leng Changhong's soul consciousness. Leng Changhong waved his hand, and the surrounding stone pillars directly gathered towards Kang Xinmu. However, before it could reach Kang Xinmu's figure disappeared. What a hindrance! Leng Changhong's eyes narrowed, and his hand grabbed the space where Kang Xinmu had just disappeared, and he grabbed Kang Xinmu and Tang Xiaoyu back. Kid, do you know whose territory this is? Do you think you can leave just because you know some spatial spells? Leng Changhong looked down at Tang Xiaoyu mockingly. Why do you care? Tang Xiaoyu's principle was that he could lose in a fight, but he could not lose in an argument. Even though it would be a terrible ending. As a matter of fact, as soon as he finished speaking, he was slapped away by Leng Changhong. Brother Jiang, wait for me. As Tang Xiaoyu's voice became softer, his aura also disappeared from this space. The speed at which he was slapped away was so fast that even Kang Xinmu did not have time to grab him back. It's just a shadow. Kang Xinmu could see that what appeared in front of him was just a shadow. Or rather, it was a clone of his soul consciousness. Ignorant child. Leng Changhong sneered. Sharp arrows that covered the sky and the earth came flying towards Kang Xinmu. Kang Xinmu quickly released the Supreme Dragon Martial Technique, blocking all the incoming arrows. Unfortunately, these sharp arrows did not have the power that they had previously devoured. He took the initiative to attack, directly facing Leng Changhong's shadow clone. Leng Changhong did not hide his mockery towards Kang Xinmu. Chapter 56-55. The reason why he could obtain the recognition of the 7 devouring demon sealing art fragment in the desolate ancient city was only because he had the inscription on him. Moreover, the fragment here was the weakest piece of the 7 devouring demon sealing art fragment. This was not enough to become a capital that he could rely on. Moreover, since Kang Xinmu could see that he was just a soul consciousness shadow, he should know that ordinary supreme martial technique attacks were completely useless against him. Facing Kang Xinmu's Supreme Dragon Martial Technique attack, Leng Zhanghong still just casually slapped out a palm. However, under the collision of the two forces, Leng Zhanghong's expression turned cold. He did not expect that Kang Xinmu's Supreme Martial Technique contained the power to repel him. He looked like an ordinary cultivator, but he had actually comprehended the peerless power of the heart soul. In the Supreme Martial Technique that this person displayed just now, it also contained the Supreme Divine Fire attribute. Looking at his Supreme Martial Technique, it was decisive and ruthless, and the strength was very tenacious, as if it had the attribute of the supreme power of dark steel. Just how many kinds of supreme divine powers did he grasp? Unless he cultivated a special cultivation method, otherwise, a cultivator could at most possess and comprehend 2 kinds of supreme divine powers. And this kind of comprehension of 2 kinds of supreme divine powers usually had 2 kinds of innate powers, also known as twin supreme divine powers. Generally speaking, supreme cultivators could only comprehend 1 kind of supreme divine power. This young man actually displayed so many supreme divine powers attributes. Leng Zhanghong was really careless just now. Kang Xinmu followed up with another attack, taking advantage of Leng Zhanghong's slight mistake, and repelled Leng Zhanghong's shadow clone in one fell swoop. The battle here caused a huge commotion, so much so that it attracted many cultivators. In addition to the cultivators in the battle formation, they all received the instructions of the 7 devouring demon sealing art key token, and following the instructions, it was Kang Shinmu's side. Sensing that there was a battle here, he became more and more certain that the wielder of the 7 devouring demon sealing art fragment was here. After Kang Shinmu roughly memorized the formation baselines of this place, he also quickly left this place. Just as he fled, a large group of cultivators arrived at this place. Where is he? Go after him. Someone tracked Kang Shinmu's aura and chased after him. There were many cultivators chasing after him, and there were also many soldiers in the formation. As long as the core of these soldiers was not destroyed, even if these soldiers were defeated, they would still stand up again. In a way, these soldiers also helped Kang Shinmu block the cultivators who were chasing after him. Of course, Kang Shinmu was not feeling well either. He was also surrounded by a large group of soldiers. The worst part was that Leng Changhong was obviously targeting him. The soldiers seemed to have received some sort of order and gathered around Kang Shinmu. Perhaps it was Kang Shinmu's imagination, but he felt that these soldiers were stronger than the ones he had encountered earlier. Before he found the heart that controlled the soldiers, Kang Shinmu would not continue fighting. He tried his best to leave the battlefield. The compass shows that he's here, but where is he? Suddenly, Kang Shinmu heard a voice and then saw Hai Fan's figure. Kang Shinmu did not want to have too much to do with this person. However, what surprised Kang Shinmu was that Hai Fan was actually able to freely shuttle through the formation and easily avoid these soldiers' attacks. Moreover, when 2 soldiers attacked Hai Fan's hand swung to the side, and those 2 soldiers flew in the direction of his hand gesture. Witnessing this scene with his own eyes, Kang Shinmu was shocked. When Hai Fan waved his hand just now, Kang Shinmu's power of soul did not sense the surrounding space or the flow of aura. Was it related to the 8 trigrams compass in his hand? Tang Xiaoyu said that Hai Fan's Star Devour could summon special things. Kang Shinmu was more interested in this special thing. Every time the soldiers approached Hai Fan would wave the Star Devour in his hand. The moment the Star Devour was waved, the soldiers seemed to be controlled and moved in the opposite direction. Hai Fan easily repelled the soldiers that approached him, and in the blink of an eye, he found where Kang Shinmu was. So it's here. As Hai Fan's voice fell, he passed through the layers of obstacles and arrived in front of Kang Shinmu. Kang Shinmu was interested in the Star Devourer and naturally did not plan on leaving. Looking at your posture, you know you can't escape. Wouldn't it have been better if you had done this earlier? It would have saved everyone a lot of time. Whether it was Hai Fan's tone or his disdainful attitude, he did not put Kang Shinmu in his eyes at all. As his voice fell, Hai Fan extended his hand towards Kang Shinmu. This action really surprised Kang Shinmu. You're extending your hand? Kang Shinmu frowned slightly. Hurry up and hand over the 2 fragments of the 7 devouring demon sealing art, and I'll let you live. Otherwise, your fate will be very miserable. Hai Fan's words sounded similar to Gu Feng's. What if I don't? Kang Shinmu raised his eyebrows and said indifferently. Do you think Tang Xiaoyu can protect you? Hai Fan had also heard about the collusion between Tang Xiaoyu and Kang Shinmu in the past 2 days. He's just an outer disciple being chased by the Heaven Yuan Palace. When mentioning Tang Xiaoyu, Hai Fan was very disdainful. As for Tang Xiaoyu's origins, or the grudges between Hai Fan and Tang Xiaoyu, Kang Shinmu was not interested in anything. Kang Shinmu also did not want to say anything more to Hai Fan. His figure moved, suddenly approaching Hai Fan. Ha! Seeing Kang Shinmu attack first, Hai Fan sneered. Then, Hai Fan put away the 8 trigrams compass in his hand, intending to block Kang Shinmu's attack with his bare hands. Except, at that instant when Kang Shinmu's supreme dragon martial technique descended, Hai Fan's expression turned grim. The intensity of Kang Shinmu's supreme martial technique seemed to somewhat exceed the intensity that he displayed on the surface. Hai Fan condensed the aura around him and similarly displayed a supreme martial technique to resist Kang Shinmu's supreme dragon martial technique. This time, both parties exchanged blows. Hai Fan fell into a disadvantage. He did not think that Kang Shinmu's supreme dragon martial technique was so powerful. It even contained mixed supreme divine power attributes. There was the pressure of the soul, and there was even the scorching feeling of a supreme divine fire. Furthermore, the supreme martial technique that Kang Shinmu displayed was very powerful in itself. After Hai Fan stabilized his figure, he faced Kang Shinmu squarely for the first time. "No wonder you're so arrogant." Hai Fan beckoned with his hand. The 8 trigrams compass appeared in his hand once more. After reciting a mnemonic chant, a cold smile surfaced on Hai Fan's face. Kang Shinmu was still somewhat dumbfounded towards this operation of Hai Fan's. After reciting the mnemonic chant for a while, he did not see anything appear on the 8 trigrams compass either. He only saw him smiling. People who did not know the truth would definitely think that Hai Fan had gone mad. Kang Shinmu had been leaking supreme soul power from the start just now. He was unable to capture any abnormalities that happened on the 8 trigrams compass. Even so, Kang Shinmu did not relax in the slightest either. Most of his attention was focused on the 8 trigrams compass in Hai Fan's hand called Star Devouring. After Hai Fan recited the mnemonic chant, only lines of rune markings appeared on the 8 trigrams compass. Apart from that, there were no additional changes. Something's wrong. There's an abnormality. Chapter 56-56. He nimbly avoided the huge claw and distanced himself from it. Kang Shinmu then saw clearly what the huge claw that suddenly appeared was. It was a huge unknown species. The aura that this species exuded was very strong, equivalent to the strength of a Supreme Cultivator Level 5 Supreme Divine Power. The creature's claw missed, and it once again swung its claw at Kang Shinmu. Kang Shinmu did not dare to be careless. This guy's body was even bigger than his divine dragon body. Just by waving its claws, it caused the air to crackle. However, usually, this kind of huge species had a common weakness, which was that their movement speed was very slow. Although this species' attack speed was very fast, its movement speed was very slow. Kang Shinmu nimbly came to its back, and then gave it a palm. When the palm strike landed, the unknown colossus actually fell forward. This scene made Kang Shinmu a little confused, thinking that it was some trick of Hai Fan. He focused his mind and released the Supreme Dragon Martial Technique again. The Supreme Dragon Martial Technique accurately hit the back of the huge creature. The huge creature took a solid hit from Kang Shinmu's Supreme Dragon Martial Technique, and its whole body suddenly fell to the ground. It struggled for a while, but it was stunned that it could not take off. "Pull yourself together." Hai Fan saw this and shouted anxiously. However, no matter how he shouted, the huge creature that fell to the ground could only stand up with difficulty, and it could not fly. Unable to take off, it was even more difficult to catch the agile Kang Shinmu. Really useless. Hai Fan frowned and said disdainfully. Then, he chanted the incantation again. Rumble. As a series of violent shaking sounds fell, a humanoid figure wrapped in black shadows appeared out of thin air. The aura on this person was very similar to the huge creature's aura just now. Wait. Where is the huge creature? Kang Shinmu glanced at it and saw that the huge creature had disappeared. Go and kill him. Hai Fan pointed at Kang Shinmu and said coldly. The figure shrouded in black shadows received Hai Fan's order, nodded, and looked at Kang Shinmu. Kang Shinmu also looked at the figure wrapped in black shadows. With his current ability, he could naturally see through the eyes hidden behind the shadows. It was a pair of eyes that were also filled with black chi, revealing a cold murderous aura. The moment their eyes met, Kang Shinmu was slightly shocked. Suddenly, Kang Shinmu felt an extremely cold aura coming from behind him. The figure shrouded in black shadows had disappeared. The supreme power of the soul followed closely and captured that person's figure. It was right behind him. Kang Shinmu quickly moved to the side. A long sword suddenly stabbed at the spot where he was standing just now. That black longsword of unknown quality almost pierced through space. The sword missed, and that person's eyes once again fell on Kang Shinmu. He was so fast that even the supreme power of the soul could barely capture his movement trajectory. The speed of this person summoned by Hai Fan was probably only comparable to the manifestation essence superposition technique. Kang Shinmu's combat power was not weak, but his weakness was that he was too slow. At first, he could still deal with that person, but as time passed, the other party would appear one step ahead of him. After exchanging blows, Kang Shinmu was surprised. Not only was the other party agile, but his combat power was also very strong. So far, Kang Shinmu had not found any breakthrough point from that person. He only guessed that this person was not a cultivator from the world he was in. This guess was not groundless. Tang Xiaoyu said that Hai Fan's Star Devourer could summon existences from other places to help him fight. Whether it was the huge creature just now or the mysterious person that appeared now, they were all existences from another world. As for the identity of this kind of existence, probably only Hai Fan knew. Kang Shinmu could not find the other party's weakness, and thus could not find a breakthrough point. He could only use Hai Fan himself as the breakthrough point. His thoughts were naturally seen by that mysterious person. Moreover, that mysterious person would always be one step ahead of Kang Shinmu's attack. From the mysterious person's behavior, Kang Shinmu increasingly confirmed his guess. The breakthrough point was Hai Fan. Although Kang Shinmu could not defeat the mysterious person summoned by Hai Fan in one move, he could still exchange blows with the other party. That mysterious person wrapped in black shadows, whether it was martial arts or the power of the soul, was very strong. The two were in a stalemate for 15 minutes. Hurry up. Suddenly, Hai Fan urged. Kang Shinmu's eyes narrowed, and he glanced at Hai Fan. Hai Fan's condition looked very bad, his face pale, and the aura around him fluctuated. As soon as the order was given, the figure shrouded in black shadows suddenly disappeared from where he stood. After a few exchanges, although Kang Shinmu could not defeat the other party in one move, he had basically grasped the other party's attacking habits. This person liked to attack from the back. Therefore, when Kang Shinmu sensed that the aura in the space was not right, he swept his body away, always able to avoid the opponent's attack. After a few breaths. Hurry up. All of a sudden, Hai Fan hurriedly urged. Kang Shinmu's supreme power of the soul had been paying attention to Hai Fan's every move. For Hai Fan, the amount of energy he had expended in these few breaths of time was not a small amount. However, Hai Fan's order was very deterrent. As this sentence fell, Kang Shinmu clearly felt the aura around the figure wrapped in black shadows change greatly. The entire space was suddenly enveloped by a cold and harsh aura, so much so that even the soldiers in the battle formation were all defeated. The soldiers were all knocked down, one by one falling into the void where the battle formation appeared, and disappeared without a trace. The person's attack did not stop because of the soldiers' obstruction, but instead became more and more ferocious, closing in on Kang Shinmu. Kang Shinmu knew that with his current ability to fight against this unknown existence, there was a certain degree of difficulty, so he did not choose to fight head-on, but focused on defense. In this way, after a few rounds with the opponent, Kang Shinmu keenly sensed that the opponent's aura suddenly weakened. It was not that the opponent suddenly weakened, but the opponent was being rejected by this space. Kang Shinmu gathered the supreme power of the soul, and maximized the power of the 7 devouring demons sealing art. Although the engraving was not activated, but with the power of the first realm of the 7 devouring demons sealing art, Kang Shinmu saw the scene just now. Just when Kang Shinmu felt the aura of the figure wrapped in black shadows weaken, a whirlpool door appeared behind the figure. This whirlpool door was the same as the one that appeared when Kang Shinmu died not long ago. Chapter 56-57. The whirlpool gate appeared very quickly, and disappeared just as quickly. If Kang Shinmu had not released the 7 devouring devil sealing arts power in time, he would not have noticed the whirlpool gate. In the eyes of a normal cultivator, they would only notice that the mysterious person had suddenly disappeared. In other words, the contract time was up, and the other party had returned to his original world. The truth was more or less the same. The mysterious being summoned by Hai Fan Star Devourer was definitely a contractor from that mysterious world. Hai Fan was a cultivator from this world. He had a special summoning magic tool called Star Devourer. He could use Star Devourer to summon a creature from another world, and sign a contract with it. When he needed help, he could use Star Devourer to summon a contractor, and have them fight for him. The first giant creature that Hai Fan summoned was also a contractor from that world. But it was only huge, it did not have much battle power. Jiang Shenwu quickly repelled the gigantic creature, and only then did Hai Fan summon the second creature. Compared to the first giant creature, Hai Fan's second summoned creature consumed a lot of his power. Now that the contract creature suddenly disappeared, it was because Hai Fan did not have enough power to keep the gate open. Once his power was used up, the gate would automatically close, and the contract creature would follow him back. Hai Fan without a contract creature was very weak. Kang Shinmu easily defeated him, and obtained Star Devourer. Kang Shinmu, Hai Fan, who was defeated by Kang Shinmu, would not give up just like that. He struggled to climb up from the void, and stared at Kang Shinmu. "Give me back Star Devourer." Kang Shinmu ignored Hai Fan, and looked at Star Devourer in his hand. Star Devourer looked like a proper Bagua compass, and there was nothing special about it. The compass also did not have any runes, nor did it have the so-called contract mark, and the material seemed to be made of black iron. It did not look big, but it had a nice texture. "Give up, Star Devourer has signed a contract with me. Even if you obtain it, it's just a normal magic tool, it won't be able to do anything." Hai Fan saw Kang Shinmu fiddling with Star Devourer and sneered. "Do I need you to teach me whether it can be used or not?" Kang Shinmu's attention was still on Star Devourer. This Star Devourer indeed looked very ordinary. No matter how he looked, he couldn't find anything special. It was completely different from when he was in Hai Fan's hands. Could it be that he could only use Star Devourer after signing a contract with it? Kang Shinmu released his soul power and injected it into the Star Devourer. When Hai Fan saw Kang Shinmu's movement, he immediately jumped up from the ground and attacked Kang Shinmu. "I told you, you have no use for the Star Devourer. Give it back." Kang Shinmu used the Supreme Dragon Martial skill to push Hai Fan back. Hai Fan retreated several steps until his back bumped into a stone pillar. Only then did he stop. Kang Shinmu glanced at Hai Fan. Just as he guessed, Hai Fan's body was very weak. His entire combat power relied on the contracted life form summoned by Star Devourer. Being pushed back by Kang Shinmu, Hai Fan did not give up. He stabilized his body once again. A pair of eyes filled with coldness stared fixedly at Kang Shinmu. Seeing that Kang Shinmu was still fiddling with Star Devourer, Hai Fan seemed to have made some kind of decision. His hands rapidly formed a complicated seal. As Hai Fan's hand seals changed, the Star Devourer in Kang Shinmu's hands suddenly lit up with a gray light. The sudden light made Kang Shinmu slightly surprised. The 8 trigrams compass, which had not changed at all before, lit up with a gray light, and several cryptic veined patterns appeared on it. Immediately after, a chilling aura was emitted from within. In this instant, Kang Shinmu felt the space beside him suddenly distort. There was an unfamiliar aura leaking out from within. This was a summon? Kang Shinmu glanced over and saw Hai Fan's hands continuously changing hand seals. It was precisely because Hai Fan's hands were constantly changing that the 8 trigrams compass had such a change. Kang Shinmu focused his eyes, silently memorizing the changes in Hai Fan's hand seals. He also memorized the cryptic patterns that appeared on Star Devourer. "Come out." Hai Fan suddenly gave a low shout. A bloated figure wrapped in a gray robe appeared out of thin air. The place where the person appeared was the place where Kang Shinmu had felt the space distort. The moment the person appeared, he went straight for Kang Shinmu. From the moment the other party moved, Kang Shinmu could roughly sense the other party's strength. He was not as strong as the person wrapped in black shadows from before. Even so, it was still very difficult for Kang Shinmu to deal with him. "Bring Star Devourer back for me," Hai Fan ordered. "What are you saying?" Kang Shinmu glanced at Hai Fan, then looked back at Star Devourer. As if afraid that someone would snatch it away, he put it away. This action fell into Hai Fan's eyes, and he was about to explode. "Something that doesn't belong to you, even if you hide it in your heart, it still doesn't belong to you." Hai Fan's hands continuously changed hand seals. His entire body was suddenly enveloped by a gray aura. At the same time, the 8 trigrams compass in Kang Shinmu's hands violently shook. As the 8 trigrams compass shook, it also revealed the contract imprint on it. It was a symbol of water. It was clearly Hai Fan's contract imprint. Seeing Hai Fan and Star Devourer's contract imprint appear, Kang Shinmu released the supreme power of the soul. How could Hai Fan not know Kang Shinmu's intentions? He could immediately see that Kang Shinmu was trying to erase his contract imprint. "Lu Zi, what are you spacing out for?" Hai Fan saw that Lu Zi was still standing there motionless, and hurriedly urged. Lu Zi was the name of the gray-robed contract life form that Hai Fan had summoned. After receiving Hai Fan's order, Lu Zi did not immediately act. Instead, he hesitated. This action really made Hai Fan anxious. Hai Fan urged again, and he himself also leaped towards Kang Shinmu. If he did not hurry, his Star Devourer would be snatched away by Kang Shinmu. "Lu Zi, the Star Devourer has been destroyed. You can forget about leaving that world for the rest of your life." Hai Fan's voice was low. Hearing this, Lu Zi's body turned into a series of afterimages, and he approached Kang Shinmu. Hai Fan himself also approached Kang Shinmu, in order to seize the opportunity to take back the Star Devourer. Kang Shinmu's power of the soul had already enveloped the entire 8 trigrams compass, and he had also covered the contract imprint. "You still want to erase my contract imprint?" Hai Fan's face was terrifyingly gloomy. It could not be denied that Kang Shinmu was indeed very strong, especially that Supreme Dragon Martial Technique, which was comparable to the vast majority of Supreme Rank cultivators. So what? Kang Shinmu's Supreme Dragon Martial Technique was very strong, but correspondingly, his soul consciousness was somewhat lacking. If he wanted to sign a contract, he needed to have a sufficiently strong soul consciousness. Otherwise, it was easy to be devoured by the contract life form. With just Kang Shinmu's soul consciousness, wanting to erase his contract imprint was simply a fool's dream. Chapter 56-58. Kang Shinmu, what did you do? Hai Fan's expression was extremely dark. He stared at Kang Shinmu with an unfathomable cold light. His hands quickly formed a complicated seal. He muttered to himself in an attempt to take back control of the Star Devourer. Kang Shinmu ignored Hai Fan. He gathered supreme soul power and erased Hai Fan's contract imprint on the Star Devourer. What kind of soul consciousness is this? Hai Fan gathered his soul consciousness and attempted to restore the contract imprint. The results shocked him. Star Devourer had condensed an enormous soul consciousness, and his own soul consciousness was actually unable to cover it. The Star Devourer was his artifact, but he had lost control of it. "A soul consciousness stronger than yours," Kang Shinmu said coolly. Hai Fan gathered his soul consciousness but was still unable to resist Kang Shinmu's soul consciousness. Soon, Hai Fan sensed the uniqueness of Kang Shinmu's soul consciousness. Rather than saying that Kang Shinmu had used his soul consciousness to erase his contract imprint, it was more accurate to say that Kang Shinmu had used supreme soul power to erase his contract imprint. Based on what Kang Shinmu had shown so far, his supreme soul power was at least at the 5th level. After exchanging blows, Hai Fan knew that Kang Shinmu had at least two kinds of supreme divine powers. Whether it was the power of the supreme divine fire or the power of the supreme profound iron, they were among the top existences in the same realm. And now, he was actually displaying the supreme power of the soul. Hai Fan was truly shocked. With the fifth level of supreme soul power, it was just a matter of time to break his contract imprint. Moreover, Kang Shinmu's techniques were not limited. It was impossible to guess what kind of supreme divine power he would use in the next moment. While he still had control over the Star Devourer, Hai Fan ordered Lu Zi to take down Kang Shinmu. As long as he defeated Kang Shinmu, he could take back the Star Devourer. After receiving Hai Fan's order, Lu Zi's figure flashed, arriving in front of Kang Shinmu. Kang Shinmu's entire body was enveloped by the supreme soul force, forcing Lu Zi to temporarily be unable to approach Kang Shinmu. In addition, she was very suspicious about whether the wielder of Star Devourer was Kang Shinmu, so her attacks were slightly hesitant. Lu Zi was very clear that as a contracted creature, she absolutely could not disobey any of her master's orders, nor could she attack her master. She had to obey her master unconditionally. Now that Kang Shinmu wielded the Star Devourer, it caused Lu Zi's decision to waver. Hai Fan mainly cultivated mental power, and her magic tool was also a summoning-type magic tool. He had obtained the Star Devourer by chance during a training trip. The method of obtaining it was also rather mysterious. Back then, Star Devourer had fallen from the sky and landed right in front of him, creating a huge abyss in the ground. The scene was as shocking as if several experts were fighting each other. Hai Fan waited until the explosion ended before finding Star Devourer. Hai Fan did not know much about Star Devourer. He only knew that it was a summoning-type magic tool. Moreover, Star Devourer's appearance was an 8 trigrams compass, but it lacked a bottom plate. Hai Fan had once searched for the bottom plate, but there were no records of Star Devourer anywhere, so he did not continue to search. In short, Hai Fan's main battle power was basically concentrated on Star Devourer. Or rather, he relied on the contracted creature summoned from Star Devourer to fight. Now that Lu Zi's attacks were hesitant and had fallen into hesitation, this was undoubtedly a fatal weakness for Hai Fan. Hai Fan wanted Lu Zi to go back and summon the contracted creature again. But he no longer had the right to close the door opened by Star Devourer. Taking advantage of Lu Zi's hesitation, Kang Shinmu gathered the Supreme Soul Force and placed a divine dragon mark on Star Devourer. However, the reality somewhat surprised him. He was actually unable to place a divine dragon mark on Star Devourer. Suddenly, Kang Shinmu's mind moved, sensing the mark of the 7 devouring devil sealing art. Currently, his grasp of the 7 devouring devil sealing art was only at the first level. But he possessed the core mark of the 7 devouring devil sealing art. When that mark was activated, the mark of the 7 devouring devil sealing art would light up. It was a mark shaped like a crescent moon, but also like the manifestation of time. Kang Shinmu pondered the symbol of the profession view mark. What astonished Kang Shinmu was that he succeeded this time. Kang Shinmu's contract mark was placed on Star Devourer from then on. The instant the contract mark was placed, Kang Shinmu felt a connection formed between him and Star Devourer. It was also at this time that he thoroughly understood what Star Devourer was. Star Devourer was a summoning-type magic tool. The 8 trigrams compass that Hai Fan possessed was not complete. It was still missing the bottom plate. As for where this bottom plate was, Star Devourer naturally did not have any records. Kang Shinmu still needed to slowly find it in his future cultivation. But at this time, being able to control Star Devourer was also a kind of gain. After placing the contract mark on Star Devourer, Kang Shinmu already had control over Star Devourer. The person who was wrapped in a long robe that Hai Fan summoned just now was called Lu Zi. Seeing his own Star Devourer being snatched away by Kang Shinmu, and even leaving a contract mark on it, Hai Fan could not bear it. He swore that even if he had to risk his life, he would take back Star Devourer. Hai Fan decisively used his long sword to pierce his arm. Dark red blood instantly flowed out, but it did not drip onto the ground. Instead, it floated in the air. In the void in front of him, an array formation seemed to appear. The blood covered the array formation and fused with it, causing the array formation to completely appear. The moment the blood-red array formation appeared, it enveloped Kang Shinmu. Kang Shinmu only felt that the spiritual energy in the space around him was instantly evaporated, and he felt a kind of scorching heat. Like a blood prison, the array formation firmly trapped Kang Shinmu. Kang Shinmu could clearly feel the temperature around him rapidly rising. This scorching heat ignored the existence of the black dragon scales, and directly drilled into his body. Blood sacrifice. Kang Shinmu recognized the array formation that trapped him. It was a very extreme array formation. Just like how the demon god race's Ao Tong had sacrificed his soul and consciousness, the blood sacrifice was to sacrifice the power of one's own bloodline, and thus obtain great power in a short period of time. As Hai Fan executed the technique, the scorching heat within the array grew stronger. Hai Fan's own bloodline power was also rapidly dissipating. The blood sacrifice could not be underestimated, and Kang Shinmu did not dare to underestimate his opponent. He immediately used all his skills, wanting to break the array formation before the blood sacrifice completely seeped into his body. Unfortunately, his strength was affected by the blood sacrifice, and his offensive power was clearly insufficient. Lu Zi, help me get rid of him. Kang Shinmu's gaze landed on Lu Zi. Yes, master. Receiving Kang Shinmu's order, Lu Zi's figure moved, and in a flash, she appeared behind Hai Fan. With one hand, she grabbed Hai Fan's back, destroying his heart. Chapter 56-59. Lu Zi, you. Hai Fan didn't even finish his sentence before he received another solid palm strike from Lu Zi. Lu Zi didn't hold back at all. This palm strike contained a powerful evil energy that caused the surrounding space to become cold. Hai Fan died, but his blood sacrifice formation didn't break because of this. It was still operating. However, the strength of the blood sacrifice formation mainly depended on the strength of the caster's blood sacrifice art. Now that Hai Fan was dead, the blood sacrifice formation didn't have a caster to provide blood sacrifice art. Its power gradually weakened. Kang Shinmu suddenly released his supreme power of the soul and forced out the blood sacrifice formation's power that had invaded his body. He also took the opportunity to break the blood sacrifice formation. Even though the blood sacrifice formation was broken, Kang Shinmu didn't dare to relax. Whether it was the blood sacrifice formation now or the soul abandoning art not long ago, they were all vicious arts that used one's life to pay for another's. To put it simply, using such arts would shorten the caster's lifespan. It was precisely because the price was great that it was powerful enough. It could often subdue the opponent or perish together. Kang Shinmu completely released his soul consciousness and checked his body's condition. After ensuring that there were no remnants of the blood sacrifice formation's power, he calmed his mind. During the inspection, there was something that puzzled Kang Shinmu. At that time, the blood sacrifice's power had invaded his body with an unstoppable force. Most of it had gathered in his soul consciousness. He was certain that the power was enormous, but when he inspected himself just now, there was only an extremely small portion of the blood sacrifice's power left. The strength of the blood sacrifice's power that was left was also not as strong as before. The power in Kang Shinmu's body quickly circulated several times, but he didn't find any abnormal power. Even his soul consciousness and sea of consciousness were calm, without any abnormalities. Cultivators would be unusually cautious when dealing with anything, even the tiniest trace of abnormality. Kang Shinmu was the same. Since he discovered that the blood sacrifice's power was greatly different from before, he naturally had to be careful. Jiang Shenwu's soul consciousness was as calm as he had felt. There were no ripples, and there were no abnormalities. However, there were circles of white mist lingering on the surface of his soul, consciousness, and sea of consciousness. This layer of white mist was very faint. If one's soul consciousness didn't linger too long, they might not be able to discover it. This layer of white mist was the supreme holy ice domain that Kang Shinmu had devoured from the perished space some time ago. Kang Shinmu did not comprehend the power of the supreme holy ice, so he naturally could not control the supreme holy ice domain as he pleased. The supreme sacred ice domain that he had devoured was originally within the extreme 10-directional devil's seal. However, as Kang Shinmu continued to fight, the supreme holy ice domain gradually gathered in his mind and sea of consciousness. Kang Shinmu was unable to unleash the supreme holy ice domain, but the supreme holy ice domain was silently refining the energy that had invaded Kang Shinmu's body. Once he grasped the power of the supreme holy ice, he could create the power of the holy ice out of thin air. Correspondingly, once he comprehended the supreme holy ice domain, he could use heaven and earth as a medium to create an ice domain. The ice domain could assimilate all the energy within it. In other words, it could refine all the energy within the domain and make it a part of the ice domain. The blood sacrifice energy that had invaded Kang Shinmu's body was refined by the supreme holy ice domain the moment it touched Kang Shinmu's mind and sea of consciousness. The blood sacrifice energy that Kang Shinmu had forced out was considered useless and useless. Perhaps even Kang Shinmu himself did not know that his mind and sea of consciousness had already been occupied by the supreme holy ice domain. It could be said that Kang Shinmu's mind and sea of consciousness were within the range of the supreme holy ice domain. This was why every time an external force invaded Kang Shinmu's mind and sea of consciousness, it was unable to affect Kang Shinmu's mind and sea of consciousness. Of course, Kang Shinmu had yet to realize that this was the effect of the supreme holy ice domain. This subordinate greets master. After taking care of Hai Fan, Lu Zi came over and bowed respectfully to Kang Shinmu. Only when Lu Zi spoke did Kang Shinmu realize that the other party was a woman. Kang Shinmu could not help but size up Lu Zi again. This clear voice that was like the chirping of an oriole was truly unable to be associated with her bloated body. Stand up. Kang Shinmu was not a person who paid too much attention to etiquette. Yes, master. Lu Zi responded respectfully, but still lowered her head and stood to the side. Thank you for just now. It was thanks to Lu Zi defeating Hai Fan that Kang Shinmu was able to break through the blood sacrifice formation. This is what this subordinate should do. Lu Zi's words and actions were filled with respect towards Kang Shinmu. After Kang Shinmu had placed a contract imprint on Star Eater, he had become its new master. When he had placed the contract imprint, he had only received a portion of information regarding Star Eater. But now, with Hai Fan's death, any information regarding Hai Fan's existence on Star Eater had disappeared. When Star Eater had erased Hai Fan's information, Kang Shinmu's soul consciousness had completely taken over Star Eater and obtained control over it. The supreme sacred ice domain had long since encompassed Kang Shinmu's entire soul consciousness and sea of consciousness. When his soul consciousness had taken over Star Eater, it had also indirectly brought the supreme sacred ice domain into it. The supreme sacred ice domain had covered Star Eater and completely erased all traces of Hai Fan and Hai Fan's previous master. Now, only Kang Shinmu's power was left on Star Eater. Information about Star Devourer also appeared in his mind. Through Star Eater, Kang Shinmu had a rough understanding of Lu Zi's origins. Lu Zi came from a parallel world, the other world. From Star Eater, Kang Shinmu understood that the other world's existence was equivalent to the parallel universe of the world he was in. It was the other side of the vortex gate he had seen when he perished. For now, Kang Shinmu didn't know what kind of existence that vortex gate was, but he had a vague feeling that it was connected to multiple worlds like Tang Xiaoyu's 10,000 manifestations origin superimposition art. The other world was just one of them. Lu Zi was an ancient spirit from the other world. The ancient spirits had existed in the other world for generations. They were a race that cultivated spiritual power. However, ancient spirits couldn't leave the other world. They could only be summoned, and they couldn't leave the other world for a long time. The length of time they could leave the other world was related to the strength of the contractor's soul consciousness. Star Eater was a magical tool, the 8-god star plate. It was a summoning magical tool. The 8-god star plate lacked a bottom. As for what this bottom was and what it could do, Kang Shinmu didn't know. Lu Zi didn't know either. Since the 8-god star plate lacked a bottom, it could only sign contracts with 5 ancient spirits at most. This was the first time Kang Shinmu had come into contact with this kind of magical tool. He didn't know much about the 5 ancient spirits. Lu Zi was one of the 5, and her battle prowess was second only to Cruel. Cruel was the man shrouded in black shadows. Chapter 56-60. During the battle against Hai Fan just now, he had only summoned 3 contracted creatures. The first contracted creature he had summoned was a colossal creature. Kang Shinmu couldn't tell what it was. It could even be said that Kang Shinmu didn't know the true form of the first colossal creature. Then came Cruel, who was wreathed in black shadows, and Lu Zi, who was now standing in front of him. Aside from Lu Zi and Cruel, Kang Shinmu couldn't tell which of the other 3 was Spirit, Origin Breaker, and Divine Light. Among the 5 contracted creatures, Lu Zi was the most special one. Aside from obeying the contract marks, she only recognized Star Devouring, or the 8-god star disc. When Hai Fan had summoned Lu Zi, Kang Shinmu had already obtained the 8-god star disc, which had given Lu Zi the first impression that Kang Shinmu would be her new master. That was why she had hesitated when Hai Fan had given the order. As for the other 4, Kang Shinmu couldn't summon them for the time being. Lu Zi, who else is an ancient spirit other than you? Now that Kang Shinmu had become the new master of Lu Zi and the other 4 contracted creatures, it was only natural that he should learn more about them. Master, there are no ancient spirits other than me, Lu Zi answered respectfully. Then they. Kang Shinmu was somewhat surprised. Through the 8-god star disc, he had learned that the ancient spirits were the most likely to sign contracts with contract masters in the other world. It wasn't that the other races didn't have any, but it was more difficult to do so. That was because the other races could leave the other world after their cultivation reached a certain level. This was something that the ancient spirits couldn't do. As for the reason, it seemed to have something to do with the origin of the other world. The 8-god star disc was only a summoning magic tool, and a broken one at that. Therefore, it didn't have any information about the other world. Master, I don't know which race they are. Lu Zi's reply caused complicated emotions to emerge in Jiang Shenwu's heart. It was no exaggeration to say that the ancient spirits were the humblest race in the other world. The ancient spirits were the most populous race in the other world, but even that couldn't change their lowly nature. From Lu Zi's respectful attitude towards him, Kang Shinmu could tell that their humbleness was deeply ingrained in their bones. If they really fought, with Kang Shinmu's current strength, he would not be a match for Lu Zi. However, Lu Zi was a contracted creature, a slave. She could only obey her contractor, Kang Shinmu, unconditionally. Kang Shinmu did not continue to ask questions and began to study the 8-god star plate. The 8-god star plate was a summoning magic tool. The contract master had to activate the 8-god star plate with his soul consciousness and use it to open the door to the other world. Then, he could summon the contracted creature from the other world. After leaving the contract mark, Kang Shinmu attempted to use his soul consciousness to activate the 8-god star compass for the first time. His soul consciousness was much stronger than Hai Fan's. He easily activated the 8-god star plate. The 8-god star plate also successfully opened the door to the other world. The moment the door to the other world opened, Kang Shinmu clearly saw the scene behind the door. It was a world shrouded in gray mist. There was a twisted whirlpool door that connected that world to this world. The whirlpool door only lasted for a few breaths before it closed. Kang Shinmu also successfully summoned the contracted creature. It was that behemoth. As soon as the behemoth appeared, it moved its head towards Kang Shinmu. Its eyes, which were as big as Kang Shinmu's fists, stared at Kang Shinmu without blinking. Kang Shinmu was a little flustered by the behemoth's stare and moved to the side. The behemoth's eyes followed him. No matter where he went, they followed him. Kang Shinmu helplessly shook the 8-god star plate in his hand. Only then did the behemoth understand. He respectfully bowed to Kang Shinmu. This subordinate greets master. When he knelt, the stone pillars in the entire battle formation shook. Before Kang Shinmu could say anything, he saw the surrounding stone pillars turn into countless sharp arrows, flying towards him. Just as he was about to attack, the behemoth suddenly stood up and blocked the sharp arrows with his bare hands. When the stone pillars turned into sharp arrows, the surrounding soldiers also rushed over. However, Lu Zi blocked all of them. Kang Shinmu secretly sighed. Fortunately, he had the 8-god star plate. Otherwise, he would have wasted a lot of time dealing with these stone pillars and soldiers. After resolving the current crisis, Lu Zi and the behemoth once again respectfully walked in front of Kang Shinmu. Master, please guide me for the rest of my life. Lu Zi's clear voice rang out. Lu Zi. You guys get up. Kang Shinmu looked at the behemoth, not knowing how to address him. Master, the name Lu Zi was given by the previous master. Now that you are this subordinate's new master, you can give this subordinate a new name, said Lu Zi. This subordinate agrees, said the behemoth. That is your name. It has nothing to do with the previous master or the new master. From the moment you are called by this name, that name will be your symbol for the rest of your life. Kang Shinmu gently shook his head. He had seized Hai Fan's 8-god star plate, but he had never thought of changing the creatures he had contracted with, nor did he think of changing their names. When Lu Zi and the behemoth heard Kang Shinmu's words, they were slightly stunned. Then, they knelt down to express their gratitude. Through Lu Zi, Kang Shinmu finally learned of the behemoth's name. As for Piyuan and God Light, Lu Zi and Cha had never seen them before. Hai Fan had inadvertently signed a contract with Piyuan. At that time, Piyuan had been seriously injured, and Hai Fan had signed a contract with him to save him. Piyuan's cultivation was too strong, and it took a lot of energy to summon him. So far, Hai Fan had only actively summoned Piyuan twice. As for God Light, according to Lu Zi, before Hai Fan had obtained the 8-god star plate, it had already formed a contract with God Light. At that time, there was no contract mark on the 8-god star plate. Hai Fan only knew of the existence of God Light after leaving a contract mark on it. However, Hai Fan had never summoned God Light, and God Light had never appeared. Even when Hai Fan had faced several life and death crises, God Light did not appear. Kang Shinmu believed this. Just like just now, when Hai Fan died, God Light did not appear. The existence of God Light had become a mystery. With Lu Zi and Qi around, the soldiers in the battle formation, as well as the occasional flying arrows, were no longer a problem. This also included the many cultivators who came to encircle Kang Shinmu. Cha relied on his powerful physical strength to break through many stone pillars, which had a great impact on the battle formation. No more soldiers appeared on Kang Shinmu's side. Isn't that the Star Devourer? How could it be in Kang Shinmu's hands? Some cultivators recognized the 8-god compass in Kang Shinmu's hands and exclaimed. Everyone knew that the Star Devourer was the magic tool of Limitless Pavilion's disciple, Hai Fan. Now that the Star Devourer had fallen into the hands of Kang Shinmu, and Kang Shinmu could order Lu Zi, what did this mean? Chapter 56-61. Kang Shinmu actually killed a disciple of Wuxia Pavilion. That was the first reaction of all the cultivators present. Who was Kang Shinmu? In the eyes of most cultivators, he was just a small character who had not been heard of. However, the magic tool in the hands of this minor character was a magic tool that everyone coveted. Recently, the most popular rumor was that Kang Shinmu had the Great Devil Seal of 10 Directions. It was a sacred item of the universe. How could a nobody like Kang Shinmu have a sacred item of the universe? Therefore, many cultivators were skeptical about this rumor. The main reason why they targeted Kang Shinmu was not the Great Devil Seal of 10 Directions, but the fragment of the 7 Devouring Demons sealing art. The cultivators who were trapped in the battle formation and entered the ancient desolate city all saw the key token of the 7 Devouring Demons sealing art. At that time, Tang Xiaoyu pointed out the way, and the fragment of the 7 Devouring Demon sealing art was in this courtyard. This proved that Kang Shinmu did not have the 7 Devouring Demon sealing art. But not long ago, the key token clearly pointed to Kang Shinmu in the battle formation. Moreover, it also showed that Kang Shinmu had 2 fragments of the 7 Devouring Demon sealing art. All the cultivators who came to the secret realm knew that there was only 1 fragment of the 7 Devouring Demon sealing art in the secret realm. However, the key token showed that Kang Shinmu had 2 fragments of the 7 Devouring Demon sealing art. This could only mean that Kang Shinmu already had 1 fragment of the 7 Devouring Demon sealing art before he entered the secret realm. In other words, he relied on the fragment of the 7 Devouring Demon sealing art to find the fragment of the 7 Devouring Demon sealing art in the ancient desolate city. It could be said that if not for the 7 Devouring Demon sealing art, many cultivators who came to the secret realm would not have noticed Kang Shinmu. On the other hand, Hai Fan was a disciple of Wuxia Pavilion. Wuxia Pavilion was one of the top sects in the outer region. This time, they sent their disciples to the secret realm because they had a mission. As for what the mission was, the other sects did not know. However, all the cultivators present knew that those who offended the Limitless Pavilion would not have a good ending. On par with the Limitless Pavilion was the Tianyuan Palace. As large sects of the same level, the Heavenly Origin Palace and the Limitless Pavilion had completely different styles of handling matters. There was a very good example of this. Tang Xiaoyu, an outer disciple of the Heaven Yuan Palace, had barged into a secret realm without permission. He had peeped into something that he should not have known, violating the rules of the Heaven Yuan Palace. The Heavenly Origin Palace had sent senior brother Lian Yi to capture Tang Xiaoyu. Since they said they would send Lian Yi to arrest them, they sent Lian Yi to arrest them. They didn't add any more manpower. Lian Yi didn't kill either. People who didn't know better would think that Tang Xiaoyu had only made a small mistake. If Tang Xiaoyu was in the Everlasting Pavilion, he wouldn't even be able to leave the Everlasting Pavilion after peeking at something he shouldn't have. He would be punished on the spot. Wuxia Pavilion's style of doing things was that if they could use their fists, they would never use their mouth. Kang Shinmu killed a disciple of the Everlasting Pavilion. This time, he will suffer. However, the conflict between Kang Shinmu and the Wuxia Pavilion was not something that the cultivators present should think about. Their goal from the beginning was the fragment of the 7 Devouring Devil sealing art. Kang Shinmu looked at the situation around him. There were no less than 100 cultivators gathered here. Moreover, the aura of supreme divine power that leaked out from each of them was at least at the 5th level. The soldiers on the battle formation were also appearing one after another. There was another thing that made Kang Shinmu a little uneasy. As these cultivators made their moves, the combat power of the soldiers in the battle formation seemed to be gradually increasing. The stone pillars that were originally in the battle formation were arranged like arrays. Kang Shinmu could feel the existence of a domain from it. When he first entered this secret realm, Kang Shinmu had mistakenly entered the ancient battlefield domain. The feeling this domain gave him now was very similar to the ancient battlefield domain that he had entered. It was just that the killing aura in the battlefield domain was much denser than the ancient battlefield domain from before. There was no doubt that this was General Leng Changhong's lifetime cultivation. As a general, he had killed countless people in his life. His attainments in the battlefield domain were not to be underestimated. The battlefield domain quietly spread out and enveloped the entire battle formation. Including Kang Shinmu, the cultivators in the battle formation all felt the existence of the battlefield domain. But each of them were very indifferent and still chose to focus on dealing with Kang Shinmu. Kang Shinmu quietly released the power of the Supreme Soul, looking for a breakthrough point. Unfortunately, as the battlefield domain spread out, his power of the Supreme Soul was also restricted, and he could not use it as he pleased. Tang Xiaoyu used the 10,000 elephant superposition technique and mistakenly sent Emoya out of the battle formation. As for himself, he was trapped in the battle formation. Finally, he followed these cultivators to find Kong Shinmu. Tang Xiaoyu naturally heard about the matter of Kong Shinmu killing Wuji Pavilion disciple Hai Fan and robbing him of his treasure. He could not help but be surprised. This Kong Shinmu looked like an honest person, but he was actually so ruthless. Not much, he seemed to have paid attention to the wrong point. Not to mention Hai Fan's own cultivation, just the few contracted creatures that Hai Fan had signed were all experts. Kong Shinmu was actually able to beat those contracted creatures, so he really had some skills. What Tang Xiaoyu found most inconceivable was that Kong Shinmu could already summon contracted creatures through Star Devour. Looking at Lu Zi and the big guy called Gu standing beside him, Tang Xiaoyu felt a chill. These seemingly ordinary people's true strength was indeed unfathomable. With Lu Zi and Gu around, these cultivators would not be able to get close to Kong Shinmu for a while. Kong Shinmu also did not want to deal with them too much. If he could escape, he would not continue fighting. He had already obtained the second fragment of the 7 devouring devil's sealing art, so it was time to leave the battle formation. Brother Jiang, over here. Tang Xiaoyu stood on a stone pillar and waved at Kong Shinmu. Kong Shinmu glanced at the stone pillar and found that there were blood-colored patterns gradually appearing on it. Hurry up and come down. This is the killing aura of the battlefield domain. It might be able to control these stone pillars and those soldiers. Tang Xiaoyu jumped down and glanced at the blood-colored patterns. The core of the battlefield domain is to replicate the killing aura of the battlefield, using it to create the aura of battle, and then condense it into offensive power. This was not the first time Kong Shinmu had seen the battlefield domain, but this was the first time he heard about the core of the battlefield domain. If it was to replicate the killing aura of the battlefield, then how powerful would the battlefield domain be? I feel that replicating a battlefield is something that every cultivator who has comprehended the battlefield domain can do. The difference is, at this point, Tang Xiaoyu's expression became serious. Cultivators can replicate the killing aura of multiple battlefields. These words enlightened Kong Shinmu. Leng Changhong was a famous general of the ancient martial country. He had fought on countless battlefields in his life, and the amount of battle aura he could replicate was immeasurable. Chapter 56-62. Although I'm not a cultivator like Leng Changhong when he was a general, I can roughly guess from his battle formation that there are at least 2 battlefields that his battle domain has replicated. Tang Xiaoyu said in a deep voice. Perhaps General Leng Changhong's battle domain could replicate more battlefields, but Tang Xiaoyu didn't dare to think about replicating 2 battlefields. For him, he could only risk his life to replicate 2 battlefields. Kong Shinmu didn't deny Tang Xiaoyu's guess. For now, the battle domain displayed in the battle formation had already replicated 2 battlefields. As for whether the replicated battlefields would increase or not, there was no indication from the battle domain for the time being. The battle domain that replicated 2 battlefields enveloped the entire battle formation. All the cultivators in the battle formation could feel the pressure brought by it. The moment the battle formation's battle domain unfolded, some of the cultivators stopped moving. They stared at Kong Shinmu's direction and immediately guessed General Leng Changhong's intentions. From the beginning, the one who released the clue of the 7 devouring demon sealing art fragment was actually Leng Changhong. The purpose of attracting so many cultivators here was to use the power of these cultivators to completely destroy the 7 devouring demon sealing art fragment. As for how to use the power of these cultivators, they could refer to the patrolling soldiers in the ancient desolate city. Aside from the soldiers who had a living heart, many of the soldiers were other cultivators who had entered the ancient desolate city. Once they lost, they would be refined into puppets by Leng Changhong. Daoist Shou Yang was the first cultivator to enter the ancient desolate city. Even he couldn't defeat Leng Changhong. In the end, Daoist Shou Yang couldn't escape and became one of the many soldiers in the ancient desolate city. However, he more or less retained his consciousness. He once persuaded Kang Shinmu to leave the ancient desolate city, probably because he learned that Kang Shinmu had the core engraving of the 7 devouring demon sealing art fragment and deduced all of Leng Changhong's plans, so he let him leave. The cultivators who weren't refined into puppets by the puppet insects in the ancient desolate city were all brought to this battle formation by the clue of the 7 devouring demon sealing art. It could be said that this battle formation was a game of chess played by Leng Changhong. The chessboard had been arranged, and only the chess pieces were left. Previously, some people guessed that the chess pieces were the soldiers. Little did they know that they were the true chess pieces on the chessboard. The chess game had already begun. How could the life and death of the people in the chess game be determined by the heavens? The battlefield domain in the battle formation had already been activated, and the 2 replicated battlefields included all the cultivators within. The cultivators who came here were all above supreme beings. However, even if they were at the same level, there were still countless differences. Even though they were all supreme cultivators, the cultivators' comprehension of supreme divine power was not uniform, which also meant that their cultivation was different. Cultivators below the 5th level of supreme divine power were affected by the battlefield domain the moment it swept over. When the replicated battlefield arrived, he had already lost the ability to resist and was trapped in the battle formation. Cultivators at the 5th to 6th level of the supreme divine power level maintained a clear mind and consciousness. However, at this time, they were unable to protect themselves and had no time to care about Kang Shinmu. Of the hundreds of people who entered the formation, more than 10 cultivators had reached the 8th level of supreme divine power or even higher. Facing the 2 replicated battlefields in the battlefield domain, they were at ease. They were even thinking about how to use this opportunity to seize Kang Shinmu's fragment of the 7 devouring demon sealing art. There were 3 people who were not affected by the battlefield domain at all. Rather than saying that they were trapped in the battle formation, it was more accurate to say that they entered the battle formation of their own accord. Among them was an ordinary-looking youth, Qing Fu, who was holding a folding fan, and Gu Tianzi, who was following closely behind Qing Fu. The 3 were not far from Kang Shinmu. The one who made the 3 pay attention to Kang Shinmu was Tang Xiaoyu. Although Tang Xiaoyu wasn't an illustrious person, his identity was rather special. He used the name of a Heavenly Yuan Palace disciple to stir up trouble outside, but Heavenly Yuan Palace still only sent a righteous eldest senior brother to capture Tang Xiaoyu. And Heavenly Yuan Palace had clearly stated that they wanted eldest senior brother to capture Tang Xiaoyu personally. Why was Tang Xiaoyu together with Kang Shinmu? Did they know each other? The battlefield domain of the battle formation had already expanded. The entire battle formation was covered in a layer of blood energy. Kang Shinmu clearly felt the pressure increase. He did not know how many battlefields the battlefield domain had replicated, but he knew that the pressure had suddenly increased. This feeling made Kang Shinmu feel threatened. Brother Jiang, calm down first. I'll think of a way to get you out. Tang Xiaoyu's expression turned serious. He released his soul consciousness and wrapped it around him and Kang Shinmu. Then, he started to study the myriad origin superimposition art. This was the first time Kang Shinmu felt Tang Xiaoyu's power. The soul consciousness that leaked out caused Kang Shinmu to be surprised. He knew that Tang Xiaoyu's cultivation was above the 7th level of divine power, but it seemed that he was even stronger. Kang Shinmu used the power of the soul to remove the pressure brought by the battlefield domain. Relying on the supreme divine fire domain, he blocked a portion of the battlefield domain's attack. The instant the supreme divine fire domain collided with the battlefield domain, Kang Shinmu's mind was suddenly shocked. The battlefield domain's replicated battlefields were actually increasing. There were already 3 levels. The most obvious change was that the blood energy in the battle formation was thicker. And at this time, what surprised Kang Shinmu was that his 7 devouring devil sealing arts core marks suddenly opened. For a moment, he took in everything in the entire battlefield domain. In the sky above the battlefield domain, there were different levels of blood energy floating. There were a total of 3 levels. Just as he was sizing it up, the fourth level of blood energy appeared. Kang Shinmu instantly understood. This was the battlefield replicated by the battlefield domain. There were a total of 4 battlefields. Holy shit, is this person a madman? Tang Xiaoyu suddenly cursed. When he spoke, a bloody aura spread out. Kang Shinmu turned his head and saw that Tang Xiaoyu was injured. Brother Jiang, hold on a while more. Although he was injured by the pressure of the 4 battlefields, Tang Xiaoyu quickly adjusted his state. Moreover, Tang Xiaoyu's state was recovering. Kang Shinmu was not a heartless person. Tang Xiaoyu thought of ways to bring him out, so he naturally protected Tang Xiaoyu. Without hesitation, he released the power of the soul to detect any abnormalities in the surroundings. The battlefield domain replicated 4 battlefields. The cultivators in the battle formation were all refined into puppets one by one, becoming a part of the soldiers in the battle formation. The cultivators who became puppets had completely lost their self-awareness and listened to Leng Zhanghong's orders. The dozen or so 7th-level Supreme Divine Power cultivators were struggling to resist the pressure of the battlefield domain. Qing Fu and the other 2 only swept a cold glance at the struggling cultivators, then their gazes once again landed on Kang Shinmu and Tang Xiaoyu. They could see that Tang Xiaoyu was using the manifestation origin superposition technique. Tang Xiaoyu, who was using the technique, could be said to be at his weakest moment. Although he had a considerable amount of supreme divine power to protect himself, he could not take care of Kang Shinmu. Chapter 56-63. The blood-colored mist that enveloped Kang Shinmu and Tang Xiaoyu caught Gu Tianzi's attention. The instant the battle formation's battlefield domain spread out, the entire battle formation was dyed blood red. The entire space was filled with a blood-colored mist. As the number of battlefields replicated by the battlefield domain increased, the blood-colored mist became even more intense. It could be said that it was normal to see the blood-colored mist at this time. However, the blood-colored mist that enveloped Kang Shinmu and Tang Xiaoyu seemed incompatible with the blood-colored mist of the battlefield domain. It was a faint layer of blood-colored mist. Although it seemed weak, it was able to resist the killing intent of the surrounding battlefield domain. Every time the battlefield's murderous aura surged over, it would be blocked by the faint layer of blood-colored mist. Grasshopper, that Kang Shinmu really is as you said. He can't be underestimated. Gu Tianzi turned his head and glanced at Grasshopper beside him. What greeted Gu Tianzi was a fist wrapped in the power of blue lightning. Gu Tianzi reacted quickly and narrowly dodged Grasshopper's attack. You old thing, why did you suddenly attack? After Gu Tianzi steadied himself, he pointed at Grasshopper and cursed, flustered and exasperated. You're in my way. Grasshopper glanced coldly at Gu Tianzi and strode away. Hey, you've lived too long that your eyes and brain aren't working well, right? Why don't you open your eyes and see if I'm in your way? Gu Tianzi turned around and chased after Grasshopper. You'd better not follow me. Otherwise, the moment you leave the secret realm will be the moment you step into your grave. Grasshopper's cold voice resounded. I'm not following you. I'm going to find Feng. Gu Tianzi smiled mockingly, dodged Grasshopper's attack, and dashed in the direction that Grasshopper had left. After taking a few steps, he seemed to have sensed something and stopped abruptly. A pair of cold eyes fell on Kang Shinmu. His fist that had been about to swing at Grasshopper changed direction. Jiang Shenwu abruptly sensed a chilling aura rushing towards him. Circulating his own strength, he sealed the supreme soul power surrounding Tang Xiaoyu's body. After doing all this, Kang Shinmu's eyes narrowed and glanced at the source of the cold aura. It was a middle-aged man with short silver hair. Kang Shinmu had no impression of this person's appearance, but he was no stranger to the aura flowing around him. Long before entering the perished realm, he had sensed this person's aura. At that time, there were too many cultivators, and the aura that leaked out from each cultivator was also very heterogeneous, so he could not identify them. He hadn't expected to sense it again at this time. Jiang Shenwu and Gu Tianze were actually separated by over 1,000 stone pillars, and among them were several thousand soldiers, as well as cultivators who had been refined into puppet soldiers. Jiang Shenwu relied on the 7 devouring devil sealing art to clearly see Gu Tianze. Gu Tianze's cultivation was not ordinary. He could naturally see Kang Shinmu clearly too. It was just that his attention was not entirely on Kang Shinmu. Not far away from Gu Tianze, there was a passerby-looking youth dressed in an ordinary long gown. Kang Shinmu had an impression of this person. Wasn't this that youth who was nagging after entering the ancient desolate city back then? If he remembered correctly, he seemed to have mentioned that the mystic realm was starting to move back then. Moreover, the mystic realm's next exit was highly likely to be in the outer realm. The myriad manifestations origin superimposition art that he displayed was much more exquisite compared to Tang Xiaoyu. This youth's performance was too ordinary compared to the surrounding cultivators who had already been refined into puppets, or those cultivators who had fallen into a predicament on the battlefield. Ordinary in this situation, it gave anyone a feeling that it was very abnormal. Kang Shinmu could not help taking another look at that youth. The feeling that youth gave him was indeed very strange. There was clearly a living person standing there, but he could not sense any aura. No, that was not him. That was the shadow that he left behind. Suddenly, Kang Shinmu felt an obscure aura flashing past his body. Following that, the space behind him distorted slightly. He suddenly turned around and saw a youth standing there in that distorted space. It was precisely the appearance that he was sizing up just now, the youth who looked very ordinary. Immediately, that middle-aged man with short silver hair also swept over. Gu Tianze saw the person he was looking for at a glance. It turned out that he was hiding in the range of Kang Shinmu's supreme divine power. No wonder he could not sense his aura just now. The youth detected Gu Tianze's aura immediately. Seeing Gu Tianze sweeping over towards him, he was not anxious at all. Instead, he approached Kang Shinmu unhurriedly. This action made Kang Shinmu very puzzled. Kang Shinmu could not remember when he had provoked such a mysterious person. At once, he raised his mind and prepared to fight. "You're called Kang Shinmu?" The youth's voice was indifferent and calm, not the slightest bit affected by Gu Tianze, who was brimming with killing intent. The calmer and more indifferent the youth was, the heavier Kang Shinmu's heart became. He had the core inscription of the 7 devouring devil sealing art. He could see through the entire battle tactics, and could even see through the battlefield replicated by the battlefield domain. He actually could not see through the youth's aura meridians. He could only barely see that with each step the youth took, the space that he stepped into would distort. Apart from this, there was no other abnormality. "Yes." Kang Shinmu responded without a change in expression. The youth came in front of Kang Shinmu, sizing up the supreme soul force enveloping Kang Shinmu and Tang Xiaoyu, and said coolly, a bit weak. His voice was very soft, and he said it very casually. Kang Shinmu was even more puzzled now. How his strength was did not seem to have any relation to him, right? The 7 devouring devil sealing art was really attractive. In order to obtain it, cultivators would always do some very confusing things. The secret territory is about to move to the outer domain. With your strength, I'm afraid you'll die as soon as you land. The youth restrained his expression, returning to the temperament that Kang Shinmu had when he first saw him. "So before you die, can you tell me the whereabouts of Emperor Shi's divine dragon?" The youth looked at Kang Shinmu and asked. Emperor Shi's divine dragon. This word caused Kang Shinmu's heart to freeze. What was his intention in looking for his master? "It's okay if you don't say it. There's still time. I'll wait for you outside the secret territory." Seeing that Kang Shinmu was silent, the youth did not intend to use forceful methods. Instead, he left very considerately. Just like him, he only took one step, and his entire person, along with his aura, disappeared completely. It had to be said that the youth's attainments in the 10,000 elephants origin superposition technique had reached the peak. Of course, the youth's departure did not make Kang Shinmu relax. On the other hand, the air around him instantly froze. A powerful force pierced through the barrier formed by the supreme power of the soul and headed straight for him. Kang Shinmu condensed his supreme divine power, and only then was he able to counteract this incoming force. You're tuning in to the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.